everyone can hear me.
Everybody can hear you through the mic, yep. All right, we gotta get the link on Facebook now, sorry.
They must be busy.
Oh, they are. But they're huge now.
I had this all set up ahead of time.
They're blacktop and seal coat. They're huge. They were working at like 10:59 to 1 night.
Really? Yeah, like, that's the whole and said like, you're gonna do this right. And they came and, yeah, well, we do it for free. I mean, they were really good about it, but I think they probably
They
don't care
charge
about
a
it.
lot, but there's a lot of few people that do it too.
Right.
And you guys don't want to be moving this stuff.
Okay, sorry for the extra delay there. 6:40, I will call the Monday, August 3rd meeting of the Darlington Community School District to order. Teresa, do you acknowledge public notice?
Yes.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Republic which stands
one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, we have Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lancaster, back here, Franco,
Yes.
Christ,
Here.
Hermanson,
Here.
Reichling. Here. Rickers.
Here.
Schilling,
Here.
Siegenthaler here, Wolf,
Here.
Zuber Bueller.
Here.
Okay, item 3 is call for special appearance. Do we have anyone present, or have we heard from anyone that wants to address the board at this time?
I don't think she's wanting to address the board right now, but this is Carly. She's a nurse in the COVID unit in Madison. And so she just came to be available. If you guys have questions for her, she's there, willing to answer.
All right, great. Anyone else? Move on then to item 4, adoption of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Schilling, second by Bronco to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 5 is approval of minutes from our regular board meeting on July 13th and our special board meeting on July 21st.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Schilling, second by Hermanson to approve those minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 6 is the treasurer's report. See that attached in board book. Any questions or comments on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, we'll move on then. Item 7, discussion and action regarding donations. 7A, the class of 2015 would like to donate a bench to the district in memory of one of their classmates.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Bronco, second by Schilling to approve that donation with our thanks. Is there any discussion?
Got any ideas where you're gonna install it?
Yes, I believe the idea is out by the football concession stand, and it's going to be similar in nature to the other ones that are out there.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 8, discussion and action regarding approval of 2 temporary part-time cleaner positions.
So guys, this is Lee. I hope you can hear me. I'm gonna come talk with administration and come to you guys asking for 2 part-time employees. Because of the increased load of work and disinfecting and sanitizing, both inside and outside, we're gonna need some additional help. Talking with administration, how the day-to-day process is gonna go. We're gonna need help disinfecting, sanitizing bathrooms 3 up to 4 times a day in both buildings. We're gonna be cleaning classrooms because kids are eating lunch in their classrooms, cleaning those as often as we can, as well as high-touch areas, pencil sharpeners, things the kids would touch on a, everyday basis. And then obviously help out with any kind of pickup of garbage after lunch. Then the big thing is the playground. We're gonna need to clean the playground and sanitize twice a day. And realistically, the time frame we have to get that done, I need another person to be able to do that. After the first and second recess, working with Lori on that. This would be these would be 6-hour-a-day people. But the hours will be flexible, depending on what you guys decide tonight as far as fall sports. We may need to have them help out after a volleyball game or after a football game, something along our cross-country meet, something along those ways. Concerts, anything that may happen this fall. And like Kale said, or Aaron said, this is only needed until the coronavirus either, is taken care of or things become under control again.
And we can use the COVID money for that, right?
Yeah.
That would be part of that CARES or something
Now we have
else.
2 sets of money. We have CARES and we just got word with gear money, another 120,000, so 250 total.
Do you have, as a temporary employee, do we need to give them an approximate end date for their employment? Rather than just something as ambiguous as was stated?
I'd agree.
Me personally, I would say at least till semester, but it really depends on when things are lifted, when things are taken care of. They say that there should be.
It's a lot easier to renew than it is to terminate, though.
Right. I'd be comfortable if you want to do semester, that's defined and we can always extend it. I mean, that's not an issue.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of ambiguous saying whenever things are okay. That could be in January or it could be 2021. So
I agree. We can do it semester by semester if that's better.
I'll make a motion to approve 2 part-time cleaners for the first semester. Second.
Okay, motion by Hermanson, second by Chris to approve 2 temporary part-time cleaners to be employed for the first semester. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes.
Hey guys, I just thought of one thing here. Sorry. How would those cleaners be impacted if we had to close down and go virtual?
Well, I think
You're still gonna have to pay them.
What's that?
You're probably still gonna have to pay them.
Okay. I was just curious, and then I just thought of it. I mean, I didn't know how that would impact. We'd still have to keep them on, correct? If we went virtual.
As long as they're not infected, they should still have cleaning jobs at the school. Deep clean or whatever.
Yeah, but if there's nobody in the room, if there's nobody in the building,
Right, but
they'd
no,
be-
it's
you're gonna do it-
clean and reclean.
They'd be treated like we did the custodial staff and the maintenance guys
okay,
last time.
that's fine. That's fine. And I'm okay with that. I just wanted
Okay.
to just clarify.
I don't think that we should say something like that they'll be treated like last time, because there could be any kind of situation that goes on. I mean, we have the option to lay people off. We have the option to keep paying people. I don't think we should make any decision like that. If we hire somebody through semester, we're required to provide them their rights. But,
This is temporary part-time.
right, through semester.
So
So we'd have to lay them off, pay them, keep them working, whatever, but I don't think we should be saying broad statements like last time, because you don't know.
if it's temporary though, isn't it at will? I mean,
Everything's at will, almost.
Yeah, I
they
mean,
wouldn't be getting benefits.
Well, the worst case we're gonna do is pay them through semester, so I don't think we need to get too involved in it.
Yeah, one at a time.
Because they are part-time too, so I mean, we can choose how many hours a week they get.
yeah, I think if we would have to shut down, I mean, go 100% virtual, we would have to revisit at that time. I don't think we need to say for sure what would happen. I mean, I think Joe's probably right. It would probably be similar, but I don't think we need to define that at this point. All right, that motion passed. Any other discussion before we move on?
No.
Okay, we're on item 9, discussion and action regarding purchase of ionization filters for the HVAC system.
So at the last meeting, you guys asked me to come back with some more references and more information. I spent a lot of time on this, talking to the.
You got to get up closer to the microphone, Lee.
I sit here, it's that.
There's one right
Yeah, you can sit right
I
here.
don't know if I had to keep going.
Oh, no.
This better, Joe?
A little bit.
I don't know if I can get any closer. So you guys asked me to get more information regarding references, hospital, schools, buildings that have put this system in, this bipolar needlepoint ionization system. Spent a lot of time on this, talking to other places. And I know Kale sent something out to you guys, a whole bunch of schools that have this installed or are working on getting this installed. It's starting to catch steam in a lot of areas. Everything from schools, K to 12, and I even have some hospitals around the country that have started to install it or have had it actually for a little while. Talked to several mechanical contractors who are in favor of this. They are non-biased, they're not employees of the GPS. They've been installing it now. They've getting a lot of calls from schools regarding what it can do, what it can't do, is it safe? And like I've told you guys before, there's nothing in this that is dangerous. There's no ozone produced or anything. And to be honest with you, the mechanical contractors I talked to have not really seen a true negative towards it. They, there's a lot of positives. The studies claim that it does take care of coronavirus, it does take care of MRSA, it takes care of tuberculosis, other pathogens, and particle control, viruses, mold, bacteria, things like that. And there's some other areas of benefit. It does provide some cleaning in the coils as well as the ductwork by taking care of a lot of the particulates that get caught in those areas. So there's benefits beyond just the cleaning of the air. GPS themselves, the company that makes this system I'm proposing, has over 1,500 school installations. They have over 2,000 healthcare installations throughout the country. Couple notable ones around, besides the schools that Kale sent the list to you guys, Mayo Clinic in Minnesota has it, Marshfield Clinic in Wisconsin has it. Couple hospitals out east, Johns Hopkins, Boston's, but several contractors, Alpha Energy, Riley's, Winona Controls, a lot of these guys I talked to were all in favor of it, said it's a really good option to helping with this pandemic and what we're going through with all the kids coming back. Another reference I found interesting is that EW Madison put it in for their athletic facility. The football team had it installed in their weight room and their practice facility as well, with the hopes that it's going to kill the virus as well as take care of any other particulates in the air. So it's one of the procedures they're doing to clean up their areas as well.
Lee, what
Yeah,
what changed from the last time when we met? Because I see now that we would be able to utilize it if and when we put in the new HVAC in DEMS. Before it was, we wouldn't be able to utilize it, but I see in the notes that it would be. Do you know what changed?
RJ, that's a good point. I had a really good conversation with Tom Riley, and we talked about the HVAC system we have here at the DEMS building. And because the needlepoint ionization system is sized to the HVAC unit by the CFM, which is basically the cubic feet per minute of the airflow in the air handler. So what he says is, if we decide to change or upgrade the system, the ductwork will stay the same. We can size the motor the same size. Therefore, our ion units that are in right now that would go in could stay in for any new upgrade duct, HVAC that goes into the building. So basically is we put it in and it stays in even if we change or upgrade.
Okay.
The square footage of the building's the same. The CFMs would be relatively the same, or at least close enough that that unit can stay in there.
Lee, what about maintenance? Is there any huge maintenance cost per year or anything like that?
See, and that's the beauty of it. I talked to all these controls guys because they're on my end. They work with the units, and they say they're seeing 10 plus years of little to no maintenance. They say the few times they've had issues is the little the points on the needlepoint system. Sometimes the brushes need to be cleaned, but he says other than that, it's really a maintenance-free system. There's no bulbs. There's no bulbs to replace like UV units have, and it really takes care of itself.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here, but
Sure.
if you go to the National Air Filtration Association, you look at COVID-19, you go down to what about ionizers, ozone generators, plasma. None of these technologies have been proven to reduce infection in real buildings. Even if they have promised based on tests in a laboratory or idealized setting, some of them have substantial concerns about secondary issues. And I know that's ozone, but if you get in a wide open building, these things still aren't proven. I don't see throwing 80,000 at something that we don't know is going to do anything. We may need that money for other things down the road, COVID related.
Possibly. And, that's a good point, Joe. I looked at that website today, and if that's their opinion, that's fine.
I mean, I can see how it works in a confined space because you're recirculating all the air. If you get into a school building, you got too many dead spots that it's going to do. And like the one you're looking at, all it is doing is changing the charge of the particle and it's dropping it to the floor, to the desk, to the whatever.
Our units in our building have been balanced, so we are exchanging 5 to 6 times, exchanging the air in the classroom. So we do have a return, Joe, that is sucking air.
Right, I understand that, but you still have dead spots in every room.
Well, I'm sure there's spots here and there. And this system, Joe, it's not perfect. But like I told you guys the last meeting, this is probably our best option as far as what we can do to sanitize and purify any kind of air that we're going to supply these kids and these staff. So I guess what I can tell you guys is, yeah, there may be dead spots here and there, but because of our buildings, and I've talked with our controls guys and our HVAC guys, and our buildings are balanced, so we are still exchanging as much air as we can in each one of these rooms. The concern though, Joe, is, and everyone, is with our HVAC, the way it's set up, is each HVAC unit or air handling unit or rooftop unit shares, 3-4 classrooms share the same unit. So all of those are mixing in the same air. So the concern we have is if we have a room, where we put kids that maybe don't feel well, or maybe don't, aren't or the sick room, I guess you want to say, we have a way of at least trying to purify that air so then it's not being spread to another room in the classroom where kids or teachers could be. The thing is, and I talk with other hospitals. I spoke with the Darlington, the Lafayette Memorial Hospital today, the maintenance director there. And the reason they haven't looked into this unit yet is because a lot of hospitals will provide negative pressure rooms. I know for a fact that the Darlington Hospital has brought in negative pressure units to their patient rooms. Their ERs have it. So what they do, instead of ionizing the air and cleaning it that way, they're just sucking, it's like a vacuum. They're sucking the air out. They're sucking it out, putting it through a HEPA filter, and then either exhausting it or recycling whatever they can. We can't do that at the school. We have to stay balanced. We can't just be a negative pressure vacuum. So what this system does, and the studies, you talk about a small area, Joe, I look at UW as a good example. It's a large area, a large weight room, a large practice facility that they're seeing, it's going to work in those large rooms. It's all
But they've not proven that.
Well, there obviously is studies because UW Health has it and UW Madison has it. So somebody in their area, and I'm sorry, I tried to reach out to those people and I didn't get a call back. Somebody there believes it's going to work. So I'd like to think that up at UW Madison, they would have done their research as well.
UW Madison's got a little deeper pockets than Darlington.
Absolutely. And Joe, I'll be honest, that's one of the deterrent factors to a lot of schools, is that there is an upfront cost, and this is expensive right away. But
if there was proof that it worked, I wouldn't have a problem with it. There's too many cases out there where there's no proof for it.
Well,
the only real proof out there is in an airplane where you have confined space.
Well, and what Joe's talking about is the U.S. Air Force did an independent study with this GPS system, and what they're doing is they're proposing to put it in their aircraft, and they found success in their aircraft and their cockpits with this system. So, and what he's saying is those units obviously are smaller than a classroom.
Yeah,
but
there is a lot of research that's been done in general as far as effectiveness on viruses and bacteria and that kind of thing. And the technology is proven to work in general. COVID, of course, hasn't been around for long enough to have a bunch of studies done. There are a couple that show really good results. I get that it hasn't been proven, but we could wait for 2 years for it to be proven. And, that doesn't really help us any now. I think the fact that places like UW Athletics are using it and other hospitals, other school districts, Schellsburg just approved a system for their schools. I'm in support of it. I think it makes sense. I think there's enough other benefit besides COVID. It's not like we are just spending the money to help us with the pandemic right now. It provides other benefits too.
But the other thing is it's not removing the germs. It's dropping them to the ground, to the tables, to everything.
No, Joe, the way
it does not remove the germs. It changes the makeup of it and drops it to the surface. You guys need to do the research.
There's enough.
It does not clean the air. It drops it to the surface.
Ionization deactivates the virus so it can infect people. The virus is still physically there, but it can't infect you.
We're not like the first ones that are doing this. You got other schools, you've got other facilities that are doing this, so.
Spend the money. I'll do a no vote. I'm not opposed if you guys do it. I just don't believe in it.
I'll move to approve the purchase of ionization filters per the bid from Riley.
I'll second it.
Is this covered under COVID money?
Yes.
Yes, and we just got a second round of COVID money for 120,000 that did not go to all the schools. The first 130,000 was divided among all the schools. I just got notice last week that we're getting another 120,000 that was for COVID related expenses that was specifically targeted. I think about a third of the schools got the second round.
Is this, Cal, is that different from the gear money, or are you talking about the gear money?
No, sir, gear money, yep. So we got CARES 130 and gear 120.
Which is good, is that we can cover some of that. I just caution everyone, I don't want that money's out there, that it's not burning a hole in our pocket. Because who's to say that we may not encounter something middle of October that we may need, or some other, if there's other mandates that end up coming down the road. Just caution. I think it's good that we can afford it through this, or use it to leverage some of the payment, but don't have to spend it all at once either.
And spending that money is not a real tight timeline. We have like a year and a half or something to spend that.
Carly, do you know what the hospital uses for that in your unit?
So at my hospital specifically, we do not have that HVAC system, and it solely came down to cost, because in the system that I'm in, we don't have the cost for it. We do the negative pressure, like Colleen said, or like Lee said, we do the negative pressure things. And I can't speak to, you know, rooms like this, because our hospital does it a unit at a time. I know it takes roughly 2 days to turn a unit around, and that's roughly between, I don't know square footage, but I know it's between 25 and 32 rooms at a time, but it takes 2 to 3 days for it to shut down, and it takes 2 to 3 days to turn it back on. And like I said, we don't have the HVAC system, but we have, you know, how many would it take for each floor and that kind of jazz. And I know our ICUs have a little bit different system. But like I said, our hospital alone doesn't have the HVAC system. We do the negative pressure cycling through units at a time. Yeah.
So 25 to 30 rooms.
We couldn't even begin to afford a negative pressure system or the downtime in a classroom to, you know, it's just, they're made for hospitals, you know. Different.
All right, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Okay, wait a minute. Who made the motion?
I did.
Motion by Ricker, second by Hermanson.
All right, so roll call will be Bronco,
Yes.
Chris,
Yeah.
Hermanson,
Yes.
Reichling,
Yes.
Rickers,
Yes.
Schilling,
No.
Siegenthaler. Yes. Wolf,
Yes.
Zuerbuehler,
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Brings us item 10, discussion and action regarding purchase of body temperature monitoring system.
One of the recommendations from the CDC for opening back up school is you have to have a screening process for your students coming back in. Part of the screening is observing for symptoms that are obvious physically. Part of it is asking them questions if they feel like they're experiencing certain symptoms. And another part is checking the body temperature. We have options for this. One option is to ask the parents to check the body temperature of the students at home before they come. That would be an acceptable screening tool that some schools are taking advantage of. Another option would be to purchase and use handheld infrared thermometers, and we could check each kid as they come in. Those are relatively inexpensive. We thought that would be a good idea. As a trial run, Lori was using them in summer school, and it proved to be time consuming. Even getting that small number of kids in, it took longer than they thought it was going to. So that brings us to the third option, which would be machine temperature thermometer that the kid walks up to, quickly scans, and reads off the temperature. I have a sample here. There'd be two versions of this. One would be mounted to the wall, and the student would be required to walk up to it for about a second. The other one would be a camera mounted up in a corner, and as everyone comes in, they might not even realize that it's there, and it scans each temperature and sends an alert to the office if somebody is over the designated amount, degree. So the sample that I have tonight is the wall-mounted one. These are $2,000. The camera mounted ones that you only have to come within 10 feet of are $6,000. So way this works, I'll get where the camera can see it. Okay, it would be mounted. Each person has to walk up to it. And of course, in 1 second, it quickly scans.
We're just not sure which second.
So you walk up to it. You get,
Normal temperature.
it's supposed to take 1 second. We would need multiple units of these. There's several entrances that kids come in and out of. Probably 4 of these at the DIMS building and 2 at the high school. If we were to purchase 1 camera for the main entrance of each building to quickly scan those people, we may be able to get away with fewer total units, but we're gonna be talking multiple units either way. This also has a lot of different features built into it. It has facial recognition, so this could eventually, if we wanted to, be tied, instead of having a fob that you have to hold up, you look at it, your picture has been entered in and the door unlocks and allows you in. You can take the live touch pictures from the yearbook and put all the kids in and it'll recognize them instantly. I'm gonna try it here. It can detect if you don't have a mask on, it won't open the door and let you in, or you send Pat to tackle you or something.
Normal temperature.
Well, that's not in normal circumstances. Then I try to sneak in without a mask.
Normal temperature. Attention, mask not detected.
And it can send an alert to the office saying someone trying to get in, they don't have their mask on. So the mask warning is probably secondary, but this would be a faster way of doing the scanning.
Does this have a feature of log, like a student log or anything like that? Are we required, is the CDC requiring us to keep track of a student log or anything of daily temps or anything like that?
This has the ability with the facial recognition, if, especially with the camera that was mounted in the hall, but this would do it too. It can record the name and the temperature and keep track of it if we plug it into the computer and tell it to do that.
Okay.
There's some question of the medical HIPAA, whatever it is, that if we do that, if we record it and keep a record of it, are we required to store that for 7 years or forever? There's questions about this. And then who would have access to those records, and can we even keep medical information? But we can for sure turn it on just like it is, and it would send a warning if someone has a temperature and not store the data if we want to. That's not even a question, but yes, it will store it if we wanted to.
Okay. I mean, I'm not proposing that we do that. I'm just, if the CDC required us to do that, we had that capability.
Right. If we ever got to the point where you had to write down every kid's name and temperature as they came in, then this definitely would be much more efficient than that. We're not at that point yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'm just going because, like us at the hospital, we have to register when we come in the morning, or anytime we come into the building, we have to write down our name, temperature, and then they ask you the 4 or 5 different questions, and that's on like just basically a paper log. But
Is
that's
that for employees, Zub, though?
Yeah.
So we're required to have a screening program, and that's pretty not defined as far as what that
Right.
means.
We are required,
and I think
but no, we are not required to purchase this by no means, or even take the temperatures ourselves with the handheld units. But if we do neither of those, we have to ask the parents to do it.
So we're looking at a total cost of you're proposing approximately 20,000, correct?
Yeah, that would be the high end.
Okay. Well, for 20,000, and just because using a handheld is a little inconvenient for us, we could probably almost outfit every kid and attach a thermometer to their Chromebook. You know, I mean.
Yeah, or we for sure could give every teacher in the first homeroom period their own thermometer, and they could do it in there. The kid would get into the school and walk a little ways, but.
Or the bus drivers. We still haven't decided what we're doing for all the kids on the bus.
Yeah. So, I mean, for 20,000, bells and whistles and fun gadgets are nice, but, in every medical facility that I've gotten screened at here in the past 9 months, they were using handheld. So I think we could leverage that cash a little better somewhere else.
Hey, Kale, this is Leah, the nurse. I can ask the school nurse consultant with the state about the requirements as far as documentation and such, because I'm not sure how that would work with, I know they want us to document everything, but I will figure out for sure on that answer too.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the question really is, do we want to take every kid's temperature every day? And if the answer is yes, then we need to spend something like that 20,000. If the answer is no, then that could look very different. And if we don't say we need to take every kid's temperature every day, we could just get 2 of the fancy cameras and we get most of them, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, those are the least amount of work for our staff to.
Is that the goal? Is it the least amount of work for staff?
Well, the goal is to put the least amount of burden on staff to achieve these things.
Okay.
Extra work's fine, but.
Well, then the least amount of work would be asking people to take their temp at home.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against that.
I agree with you, RJ, but realistically, is that going to probably happen?
Absolutely not. And
No.
I'm still amazed that we're unable to take kids' temperatures as they come in. Like I said, we could, for 20,000, we can get, or even 1 unit at $6,000, we can sure get a lot of handheld temps.
I think the problem is just the delay it would take and the time we'd.
And the parents that would refuse to take the temperature may be the same ones that just give them an aspirin if they do have it and send them and they're gonna get by the scanner anyway.
Well, that's speculation though. I mean, we can't manage every aspect of that.
You already got kids coming in different waves. They're not all coming through the door at the same time.
Well, I mean, you can make them come through the same entrance so you can get the temperature if that's truly what our goal is.
Haven't we talked about plans on what doors kids come in and not? It's going to be different, right?
Yeah, to have everyone come in the one door that would be a lot of kids.
If you have just the 2 cameras, you can catch a lot of kids coming in the front door and then you can leave it on during the day, point it down the hall, and it'll constantly check every kid that walks by and send an alert if anybody ever has a fever all day.
I wonder, Leah, if you have anything to say about temperatures and what a temperature is good for as far as a school deciding whether or not a kid should be in class or that kind of thing.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, okay,
Yes.
yeah, so, I mean, I think the technology is great, but obviously it comes at a price. I do like the idea of being able to point it in towards as the day goes, only because I do know that, parents do Tylenol up their kids and send them in. So at least it would catch those kids midday that the Tylenol is wearing off of, not that they're not already infecting people. I don't know, this is a tough call because I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit and say, fevers aren't the only sign of COVID. It's just one of the many symptoms. However, taking the stress off the staff would be great because taking kids' temps every morning does take time. And when it gets colder outside, that may not be an option. Having them wait outside to do that. Again, the parent issue of not having them taken. So I don't have a really solid answer for this. It's kind of a tough call.
I mean, I think too, temperature checks are, you're right, they're not just for COVID as well, but on the other end of the spectrum, maybe we pick up some more kids during influenza season and things like that, where that we reduce the amount of kids that are in school that have influenza, that are walking around.
Absolutely. Any sort of virus, it would be very helpful to decrease.
Right.
Absolutely.
I guess my next
so
question is,
that's
what are you gonna do when you get one that's temped out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can answer that.
kid?
So, yeah, you got a kid with a high temperature, and the current recommendation would be to take them into the office and isolate them from any person. We'll try to get 6 feet apart from them. I know that when you get multiple kids in the office, that
You're gonna get more and more.
Yep, that is going to be another whole nother conversation, I think, about trying to figure that out. But yeah, you try to get those kids with the temperature away from everybody as long as you can, and honestly, you kind of hope and pray that you can get them a ride home as soon as possible.
We actually have a room designated for students that have COVID symptoms.
Perfect. That's perfect.
In the office.
Does that room, do we have enough that we can put more than one student in that room if we do get multiple patients or multiple kids that do have temps on a certain day?
Yeah.
We can keep them 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Can you supervise it?
There's too many of them.
Probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, whoever's great at that.
So when somebody checks high with one of these machines, they're obviously in line to get in the building, right? So it's gonna lock the door, or we're gonna have somebody standing there anyway?
We'll have people at the entrances.
Anyway.
We'll be outside. Yep. The people who are usually outside.
So exactly where would they be mounted?
that was what I was gonna ask to follow with that. Do they have to be mounted? Because I know a lot that I've seen can actually just go on a stand so that they're portable.
Because they can't be outside, correct?
Right.
They have to
The
be.
camera would be up in the top of the hall, like in those balls, like you see the security cameras taking your temp. That thing would probably be like on a music stand and everybody would have to walk past it.
So you did temperatures for summer school, right? And that was kind of a test run.
Yep.
And the time it took for just the little handheld, shoot them in the forehead thing, that was.
So summer school started at 8:30 and I would go out like 8:15 and start doing them. And the group I had, there were 20 kids. And it took about 15 minutes to get all of them done because you take the temperature, then you sanitize, then you check that you took their temperature, and then you do the next one.
So that method's really not feasible for our
Well, the
entire.
problem is you're gonna have a lot of kids standing outside and keeping them in spots outside where they are socially distanced. We're gonna have to have people out there to monitor that too, because you could have a lot of kids out there.
I think trying to take temperatures individually like that is just something that's just not going to be.
They do it at racetracks, 2,000-3,000 people right now getting in. So I don't know how they're getting people in the gate and what's taking you so long. I'm not saying you're doing it wrong by any means, but some racetracks in other states right now temp check everybody. There's 2,000 to 3,000 people.
Are they the ones that are this is the one that's rolling across?
I'm not
the
sure.
forehead. It's not the one that.
So that's the problem right there.
Right. Why don't you do a touchless instead of the roll across the forehead? Because there's no sanitizing.
So if you're worried about them getting in the building hot, why don't you check them when they get on the bus? Then they're still at home. You can turn them around and say, go back in your house.
I don't think you want to do that on a state highway and things like that. I mean, that's my concern.
I did
You know, leave it
have
at
some parents say that they leave before their kids and the kids are told to lock the door, which that's a parental issue, but I did hear that a couple times because I thought the same thing on, if parents knew ahead of time, hey, if your kid doesn't pass the temperature check, they can't get on the bus. I guess they could plan differently, right?
Well, if they took the temp at home, they wouldn't send them down to the bus.
We talked to
So why do you gotta check them off?
Being part of.
I mean, as long as anybody gets in the building, we're saying they were temp checked. I mean, we don't have to go through that system every morning of, okay, hey, Billy, check. And you gotta find them. I don't think you would have to do that.
Do we have to identify that we check?
Whatever you choose is not going to be a perfect answer for anything.
No, I get it, but I find it hard to believe if you're doing temp checks, anybody that gets in the door, because the door will be locked after 8:05 or whatever you guys allow. I don't think you have to check off every single person as they come in. It just means anybody that hits our door needs to be temp checked if that's what they're asking. And then after that, when they open the door, they have to temp check them then.
Then they have to come through.
So I don't think you need to go to the whole checkoff thing. That's just my opinion. I find it hard to believe, you know.
We are not required to check every kid or check off every kid, but we are required to follow whatever rule we set for ourselves.
Okay.
Whatever you guys say we have to do, then we have to do it.
Okay,
The only, sorry, go ahead, RJ.
just to clarify, we're not using the touchless, we're using the roll across the forehead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Why?
we have some touchless ones, which,
Well, that would save the whole disinfectant thing, but all I'm saying is that other organizations seem to be able to screen people when they're coming in with a temp. If it's too convoluted or too much effort for staff, then perhaps the default is, and that would cover, Joe, what you said, is that we put the burden back on the parents and hope that they're all truthful, you know? But I'm still curious that we're unable to do a quick temperature check as kids come into our buildings. But anyway.
I think you can, RJ, but the problem is, I mean, if you're going to try to screen 600 kids, that's going to be very time consuming. I mean, it's one thing if you got to do 30 kids, but if we're trying to rustle 600 kids in a 15-minute period, that's going to be a lot to ask.
I do have a pretty good feeling that we will have to document on every kid's temperature that we do check. I have a good feeling that that's probably going to be a requirement via charting, only because it already is for when we take temperatures in school, just prior to COVID. But I don't know. I will double check. So that's just a consideration on all the time it takes to, chart that and get it documented in everybody's student file.
The CDC just says that we need to have a screening, some type of screening, correct?
correct, but I think she's saying if we choose to take the students' temperatures, then we have to document it.
But we don't know for sure. So if we could get back on that,
Yes, I will. I just want you guys to consider that too, because that is also time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you technically do not take their temperature, you don't have to document that kid.
Correct.
I would assume, yeah.
so can we table this until next meeting? I mean, we can get thermometers. I know for a fact, even if the company you've worked with can't get those, 6 other companies at the same price point that have them in stock every day. So.
I just brought this one because for radio show.
Right, yeah, I'm just, until we know the documentation and things,
Yeah, the documentation thing, there was a whole huge wrench in it, because if we have to do that, that really.
If that's the case, then the route of a picture that can be saved makes total sense, because we can't afford to pay employees to document. And then you have to make sure it's an employee that knows every kid and,
Just because I find it hard to believe doesn't mean it isn't so, but I can't believe you have to keep the temperature of every kid that doesn't have a fever.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
I don't think so.
I mean,
either.
we
I think
do
as long
already.
as you got a standard and you abide by your standard, that's all they're gonna ask.
If they've got a fever, document it. If they don't, who cares?
I mean, and they have waived different things, even though I understand that, like taking temperature, I think that we get clarification on it. But for example, to do teledocking, they suspended the HIPAA penalties. HIPAA is still in force, but they just waived the penalties. So anyway.
I will say that if we go the thermometer route, the infrared no touch is definitely, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know, Carly, but 3 to 5 seconds is the normal.
It still takes quite a while though, because that's what they do right now when we all come in the morning. Any other shift is fine, but at 7 o'clock when everybody comes in at once, there's a line for at least an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and that's nowhere near 600 people.
Sure.
But it still takes, it takes a second, and what we're finding is when they come in and you go to scan the forehead, even ideally, it takes about a second. Sometimes it just doesn't register right away and you gotta wait for it. And like I said, if you've got over 100 people coming in at one time, it does take quite a while to do. But I don't know what the requirement is for school, but I know for us, if you've got normal temperature, get your mask out of the way. If you've got a temp, then you're stopping, you gotta do the documentation. But that, like I said, that's just at the hospital, that has nothing to do with school requirement.
So let's just table this until we get some further clarification.
So are we gonna have a line anyway, even with that scanner that you showed us? You're gonna have a group of kids anyway, aren't you?
With the scanner, you probably would. With the camera, you would just walk in, you don't even know it's there.
I like the overhead camera idea even more so, only because of if we are gonna end up allowing a few spectators or anything, it's gonna cover us in that sense too.
Try the touchless scanners, and if it doesn't work, you're still money ahead, and then you can go to the other ones.
We have.
I guess if we're even leaning towards it, I think I would lean maybe towards the cameras at your main entrances, your busiest ones, and then your scan or your other, the less expensive ones at the other entrances. Yeah, and someone brought, I don't know who brought up the point, but if we are eventually going to allow visitors or spectators for sporting events, I mean, I think that's going to be important too, because hey, if you can catch an adult, and I think adults are just as important in scanning as well, because a lot of adults are walking around, they don't even know they have a fever. Kids will run 102, 103, or kids will run 101, and they'll act normal. An adult runs 101 temp, and they don't feel well, or they just. So I think that I think it's just as important as to be monitoring our staff as well as when they're walking in. They may have a slight, 100.1, and they don't feel. I mean, they feel okay, but they don't know they have a temp.
I'll second Bob's motion to table it.
Okay. Motion by Hermanson, second by Reichling to table this. There's no discussion on the motion to table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes, so we will have that on the agenda for next time, and hopefully we'll have some clarification on the documentation. Item 11, discussion and action regarding pay for short-term subbing by teachers.
This would be our teachers during the day that we ask to sub for another class during their prep time. It's been tradition here, I believe, over the years that when a teacher gets asked to do this, it's very rare and occasional, and it might be somebody has to leave 10 minutes early to go to the dentist. Somebody else, their neighbor teacher, will just cover them, and there's no compensation, and then maybe next time the other one has to go, they'll cover and kind of take care of each other. What we're anticipating for this year, and the reason I put this on the agenda, is that there could very likely be a severe shortage of substitutes. And rather than asking a teacher once or twice a semester to give up the last 10 minutes of the day, we could find ourselves in a position where we're scheduling a substitute where all 8 periods of the day are covered by different teachers that have their prep during that period. And this could be happening frequently. So to compensate them for that, that's what I'm requesting, is the authority to pay them $20 per class. A substitute is $125 for a whole day. If you take 6 periods in the high school, you're not going to get a sub during their prep time or their duty time. The other 6 periods, $20, that'd be $120. So the high school is going to a block schedule, so they're going to be staying in each class for twice as long. So requesting that if teachers give up their prep period to sub, they could be paid $20 per class period. So for the high school, if they did it for 1/4 of the day during the block, that'd be $40, 2 class periods.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hermanson, second by Reichling to approve the pay for short-term subbing by teachers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Item 12, discussion and action regarding retirements and resignations. 12A, Judy Whalen is requesting to retire as a 4th grade teacher after 18 years of service to the district.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Schilling, second by Zubeler to approve that retirement. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. 12B, Sean Leary is requesting to resign as a 7th grade boys basketball coach.
So move and thank him for his service.
Second.
Motion by Bronco, second by Zubeler to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. 12C, Karen Bennett is requesting to resign as a food service worker in the Dems cafeteria.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Hermanson, second by Schilling to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
For 12A, Judy Whalen retiring, I got her letter of retirement at such a time that according to the teacher handbook, there should be a liquidated damages penalty. The time period that she resigned in would ordinarily result in a $500 liquidated damages fine, but I would ask if we could waive that due to the extraordinary circumstances of her situation. She wasn't leaving at that time for any other reason than the virus or strange times.
I'd make it part of the motion.
Second.
Well, we already voted on that motion, but we're still on 12. We can have a second motion. So that's a motion by Schilling, second by Brunko to waive that liquidated damages. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Nope.
I don't know why we would, but it's her choice to retire. She knew the consequences.
We're feeling generous tonight.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Item 13, discussion and action regarding supplemental pay for special ed assistants.
I put this on under the title as discussion and action, but there's no reason for action tonight. We can, I put it that way in case, so you'd have the option, but I think if we could just get it on your radar as something to think about, and then we'd have some time to digest it and think about how it would affect all the other people and things. But I heard that some schools are offering their special education aides supplemental pay during this COVID time to make up for the increased risk that they are facing that other staff members aren't. And I just had a staff meeting recently with everybody on the staff, and I told especially the teachers, if you're not comfortable based on your personal situation with being very close to the kids while this is going on, then get a mask and get a face shield and get a plexiglass shield and teach at your smart board. And we're not going to require you to go around and get down on your knee and work with each kid one-on-one with your face real close to them while this is going on. And there are some teachers that I know that are going to take advantage of that, and rightfully so. Special ed aides don't have that as an option. They have to lift the kid, put them in the wheelchair. They have to do some of these things. And so there are some schools that are offering them a supplemental pay during that time to compensate for the increased risk that they have as a thank you for what they're doing. Just something to think about. Maybe I will put it on the next meeting.
You got a total dollar amount of what you think it'll cost us, say per half the year or something like that, or whatever?
Yeah, we have currently 6 special ed aides that would fit this category. And for the entire year, they work a total of 8,200 hours. So for all 6 to get $1 an hour for the whole year, $8,200. You could do the math from there.
I'll make a motion to approve it tonight for the school year.
I thought we were going to table it.
For the pandemic, length or whatever we receive.
It's not gonna be gone by.
I understand that. Do you want to do it for the year? Is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I said the year.
Sometimes a year turns into 2 years.
No, I said for one school year. Yeah, my motion is to do it for one school year. Sorry.
And that,
I don't think we should do it more than a semester at a time, but that's just me.
Can that would that money, since it's COVID related, come out of one of the two funds?
Yes, sir, definitely.
Jesus, we'll have that 250 spent before we're done tonight.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep up the good work then.
So if this, I mean, Kayla, you basically labeling this as hazard pay?
Hero pay would be my label.
Well, I guess my concern would be, are we going to open a can of worms when we have a individual that's cleaning rooms? I mean, are they going to come and ask for hazard pay and whatnot?
You're absolutely right, they are.
They can protect themselves, just like Kale said with the teachers. You know, they have the ability to keep their.
Is that how they see it in a court of law?
Well, every
We're gonna
person
start that.
could claim increased risk, you know, with things that are going on, but it just, in my opinion, those people are in a special category, and I don't think in court we'd have a problem, because you can choose to give it to certain people and not, as long as you can justify it. It's not a legal, it's more of a political thing. You may have other groups coming and asking questions.
I guess I'm not sure I'm buying into the whole supplemental or hazard pay. I mean, you're not seeing that at hospitals or any other place right now. I mean, I'm not getting any more hazard pay or.
Yeah, but Nick, that's different.
No, it's not,
You're a trained
Colleen.
healthcare provider with
understand that.
N95 masks and everything else. Like, we're
Right,
in
but
a school district.
Yeah, but the
But are you-
N95s aren't 100% effective either. I'm taking a risk. I mean, there's nurses on the floor that are taking risks, and they're not wearing N95. They're wearing just a normal mask. They're not getting supplemental pay. I mean, I just, that's fine if we want to do it, but I think you have to keep in the back of your mind that you may have others that are going to come and say, hey, I'm at risk just as much as this individual is as well. And if that's okay, I mean, if that's what you guys want to do, I think we just need to keep that in the back of your mind, that you may have others that are going to come and ask for supplemental pay or hazard pay.
At our last meeting also, one of the things that was brought up was that the CDC and the EPI guidelines were just that, guidelines. And both our insurance and our legal consultants did indicate to us that the more mandates or rules that we implement, despite how good our intentions are, does open us up to things. You know, I'd be more in favor of tabling this to digest it a little bit and how it would impact other workers.
I think like 25 or 30 minutes ago, we were talking about tabling it.
What?
You've got a warped sense of time. It hasn't been that long. Just feels like it.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to that.
Well, we've got a motion on the table to approve the $1 supplemental increase for special ed for the school year. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. So, motion by Reichling, second by Wolf to approve that pay increase for the school year. Is there any further discussion?
You said $1, but it's actually Gail's actual investment, $2.
I think, Colleen, was your motion for $1?
$1? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So an increase of $1 for the 2021 school year. Further discussion? See none, let's have a roll call vote, please.
All right, so Bronco,
No.
Christ,
No.
Hermanson,
No.
Reichling,
Yes.
Rickers,
Abstain.
Schilling,
No.
Siegenthaler. I would say yes. Wolf,
Yes.
Zuberbuehler,
No.
Okay, that motion does not pass. Before we move on, I guess to clarify, the people who were talking about tabling, do you want to see this on the agenda again, or do we want to just move forward with the result from tonight?
I'd like to see it back on the agenda again, next meeting after we digest it a little more.
Okay, unless anyone objects, we'll have it on the agenda again.
We just voted on it. I would, I mean, we had an opportunity to table it, but since we chose to vote, we should stick with our vote.
Yep, I just wanted to give the opportunity for the people who did want to table it. If you just want more time to think about it, tell me now. Otherwise, we won't put it back
I'd like
on.
to see it back on the next agenda.
I don't want to see it.
Okay. Unless there's some new piece of information that comes up, it won't be on the agenda then.
That's equitable.
Okay, we'll move on then to item 14. Discussion and action regarding purchase of online curriculum for K through 4.
We are certainly going to have, in the next 9 months, students in the building learning and sitting in their desks from the teacher, and students at home learning virtually that way. For the students that are in grades 5 to 12, our plan is to not do what we did last year for the last 3 months. Didn't go as well as we would have liked it to. We learned a lot from that. We're going to make a lot of changes. We're going to require a lot more Google Classroom and Zoom meetings with the teachers, and there's going to be a lot more live ability for students in grades 5 to 12 to log on and just watch the class as if they were there. Doesn't work so well for K4, for a kindergartner to log in and watch for 8 hours, what's going on in the classroom and be expected to keep up with that. And I don't know if it's fair or realistic to think that our kindergarten teachers can just find time at night somehow to create a virtual opportunity for those 2 or 3 kids that they might have at home too. So what we're proposing is that for K4, those students are provided a virtual online curriculum that we purchase from an outside source that provides the instruction, the lessons and everything. And our teacher would maintain some contact with them, definitely, but wouldn't be the primary instructor. We'd have somebody identified on the staff here as the virtual coordinator that would keep in touch with those parents and make sure that the students were having their needs met. I'll turn it over to Lori. She's been doing some research on which curriculum she'd like to see for that.
So we had a demo the other day from CISA, and what they actually showed us was something from Study Island and Edmentum. We were hoping that those curriculums were going to be for K4. Study Island was for K4, but unfortunately it was more just interventions and supplemental things. It doesn't really replace the curriculum, so I don't think it would have been effective. So the program they have is called Calvert, and when they got back to us on the pricing on it, it is to have the curriculum and a teacher, so the teacher teaches it. It is approximately per semester $1,600 per student. If we were only going to have a few students that would use it, CISA would purchase those seats and we could purchase from them through this other program we were looking to purchase through CISA. However, if we had a lot of students that were going to do it, it's something that we would have to purchase ourselves. I spent last Friday and today trying to get a hold of K-12 Academy out of McFarland, because I think that you can purchase programs like that through them as well. I have not gotten through to anyone yet. But I was on hold and they told me they do it for schools, but I don't know the cost on that yet. So.
Do we have a feel for how many students in that age group that may choose to go all virtual?
At this point, no.
When would we have an idea or a generalization, or just a specific amount?
Yeah.
We surveyed the parents and we asked, generally, how comfortable do you feel about sending your kids back? And it was about 80% were somewhere in the comfortable range.
Yep.
But I would not take that as those other 20% aren't sending their kids. So, you know, there's no way to put an exact number on it based on that survey, but I would guess maybe 5 to 10% of kids are gonna stay home.
Which within that K-4 range would be how many students?
60 kids in a grade, so 3 to 6 per grade, 12 to 24.
So at the high end would be 24. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question would be, what if we end up having to go all virtual? Then I mean,
Yep, so if we ended up everyone having to go virtual, then our teachers would do that. The only thing would be is if we started this and those kids started on that other virtual program, we probably wouldn't pull them out to come back to our school, but if our teachers stopped teaching in the classroom, then they would do all the virtual learning for our students.
And they would have time to do it, and that would be reasonable to expect, yeah.
Okay.
We haven't approved it yet, but your plan did ask for people to tell us if they were gonna send their kids or not by August 14th.
Correct.
Okay.
So this dollar amount, is that per year?
Semester.
That's a per semester?
Kid.
Per student.
Yeah.
Per student, correct.
So what you're saying is that 5th through 12th grade is going to be required to be online for their classes every single day if they're not coming into the building.
It won't be exactly the same amount of time the other kids are online, but yes, they'll have to report on for their classes.
So.
Well, how am I gonna get any work out of it?
I don't.
We'll have to get them up earlier.
I mean, I think it's safe to say, you know, I struggle with this vote big time because of the questions I asked you. I never would want to deny a kid learning. I would never want a kid to open enroll to another school because we're not able to provide that. But I also think that it's a huge expense that I struggle with. You know, if our 5th through 12th grade teachers have to invest their nights and weekends to create the curriculum and make sure that the students not coming are learning online, even if they're not online for the class that they're teaching, why is K4 different? I get that they're learning different things, but I think before I could vote in confidence, I would want to know how many students this is going to be. And then I'd also like to know, have we looked at an option of, if there's going to be that many students, do we have a teacher that we can, you know, downsize a couple classes and actually have a teacher dedicated to online teaching while the building is open for those grades? Is that an option, or can it be a rotational? You know, I'm not sure, but
I would like to look at some costs of some other programs too.
Sure.
Before we make 100% decision.
But RJ, we could just use CARES money for this.
Now it is gone.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
So K4, say we had 30 kids at home. I mean, is it, I guess K4 wouldn't, let's say K2, we had 20 kids at home. Is it possible to take one teacher and say you were the teacher of those 20 kids virtually? Does that like mess up
Well,
the
we have
plan?
to rework a lot of things, but
Yeah, I mean, is that too disruptive?
I mean, you're talking about up to $20,000 or more, aren't you? Oh, more than that. It's 1,500, ain't it, a semester?
16 a semester for
I mean,
students.
so talking about a lot of coin.
Well,
And then the other part that I have too, and maybe we can get a demo of whatever you decide that you want, but you know, what kind of commitment, like, I know a kindergartner can log on and open a program and do it, all right? Like, we all know that, but is there commitment from the parents? Or, you know, are these things that these parents have to be aware of? Like, hey, this is only available from 8 to 4, you know, and how do we monitor progress? And just,
Well, this is all hypothetical, what we're discussing right now, until we know, A, how many kids are impacted, and that'll help us understand what the total spend is. And I believe I overheard, I think it was you, Lori, that said you're looking at some possible other solutions besides this one. Is that correct?
yes, I want to look
Okay.
into some other programs, or I'm
So-
hoping they get back to me.
So why don't we come back to that when we have some more details and have a better idea what the actual spend might be and also how it will be implemented?
So our next meeting is the 17th.
So that's after
So
the
we'd have
deadline?
numbers by then.
So you'd have numbers by then, but does that put you in a pinch as far as our options? And having teachers ready to implement them less than 2 weeks, well, 2 weeks from that date?
These days, you just do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
The only thing would be also if there are dates that you would have to enroll in those by, and I can let Kale know if that's the case.
Well, if it's doable, yeah, let's wait till the 17th and.
Right, but you're sending out a thing that these parents need to let us know by the what date?
The 14th.
14th.
Guys, can I just add one thing here?
Yes.
One thing to keep in mind, I know you guys all know this, but you know, I would hate to lose a kid to an open enrollment to a virtual school, because that's what they want to do. When we're going to pay whatever it is, $1,300, $3,000, whatever it is, when we're getting the $10,000 per student, just kind of keep that in mind when we come back to this, because you know, that'll be options that I think kids will look at and families will look at, is to go full virtual through an open enrollment type situation. And we all know open enrollments are going to get approved, you know, at this point. So something to keep in mind.
Right, yeah, financially, it's still in our favor if that person's gonna open enroll, certainly.
Correct.
All right, well, if you guys are comfortable waiting till the 17th,
I think that'd be the best thing at this point.
Well, either way, the kids are gonna get taught, just a matter of how we're gonna do it, whether we're gonna hire a company to do those small, hopefully small group of kids, or we find a way to do it ourselves.
Aaron Lancaster, do you know how much you pay? Because didn't you purchase some stuff through K-12?
Yeah, we've used some online programs for like individual classes. Sometimes it's, you know, $200, $300 per course, whatever it might be, depending on who we're using. So we've never looked at a complete online program for an individual student that I'm aware of, but we do use it for individual courses.
all right, if there's no more discussion, then we'll put that on the agenda for next time. Brings us to item 15, discussion action regarding food service plan for each building.
Lori and Aaron and I met with Connie, talked about the plan for the food, and I'll just let Aaron and Lori each describe the plan for their building for lunches.
Okay, I'll go first.
Sure.
So in my building, K through 4 students are going to be eating in their classrooms. I'm gonna have the individuals who usually supervise in the cafeteria be the ones who deliver the lunches to the different wings. And at the K1 wing, I'm gonna have the kindergarten eat first while the first grade is out for recess, and then flip flop so we have less students on the playground at the same time. Gonna do something similar in the 2-4 wing where 3rd grade will go out to recess while grades 2 and 4 eat, and then flip flop, but they will all eat in their classrooms. At the 5-8 level, I want to have 1 grade level eat in the cafeteria per day. So they will actually, so 5th grade will come to the cafeteria, they will eat sitting socially distanced, and we will figure out the cafeteria. The other classes will eat either in their classrooms or outside. Outside preferably as much as they can. So that's our plan.
Okay, the high school, you know, we're gonna leave 1 class, you know, we'll rotate each class through the cafeteria, and then we're gonna put some picnic tables in the outdoor area, kind of by the boiler room there. So, you know, maybe the first week, the seniors, you've got that area. All other students will either eat in their homerooms simply because their homerooms are a smaller class size normally. But I also am going to allow students to go outside and eat, either on the hillside or kind of down by the football concession stand, things like that. And and make sure that they're keeping things clean, because I think getting outside will be a good thing for kids to get a half hour, 40-minute break, to get some fresh air and things like that. And then we'll just rotate each class through. We will dismiss 4 lunch by class, so only one class will be coming to the cafeteria at one time until that first class is done. Then we'll dismiss the second class. With our block schedule, we're looking at implementing a day 1, day 2 model. We're going to have a longer lunch period, and we're just going to do 1 lunch period, so we should be able to run them through relatively quickly, and then give them some options of where they can go to eat.
Yeah, I just have a question, guys. And I'm hearing, which I'm all in favor of, eating outside. Do we have any accommodations for those days? Let's say we have some storms and we're not able to allow kids to eat outside. What are our plans then?
I
And
think
they'll be in
they're
the
gonna have to go
classrooms.
to their homerooms at the high school.
Same in my
Okay.
building.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we'll have those days, and we're limited with where we can put kids. But we'll have the cafeteria set up to where tables are all facing the same way, and kids have to, we think we can get 2 at a table, all facing the same direction, and we'll get as many kids in there as we can in the class. Any other questions?
Do you want action to approve those plans?
Does it say?
Does say action, but I don't know that.
Or not yet, I don't know if we have to be approved.
Okay, yeah, I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on then to item 16, discussion and action regarding school reopening plan.
I have to really thank Julie Fitzsimons. She created extraordinary 1-page, easy to read informational chart here, which I'm gonna send this out tomorrow to the entire community. What it says on it when I send it out will be determined by what you guys approve, but what we put on here is our recommendations for what as a starting point. If I had to guess, the thing that we probably need to talk about is the masks. After this was created, of course, then the governor put out an order. I still think it would be wise for us to come up with a plan of what we're gonna do for masks in case the governor's order gets overturned. There is a history of that. And if the order were to be overturned the day before school starts, it could create a lot of confusion of what's the rules, and then we might have to have a quit meeting or try to figure out what we're gonna do. So what I'd like to see is we make a decision tonight that we're gonna follow the orders of the state and the local. In the absence of any orders, here's the rule that we agree that we're gonna put into place. And Aaron and Lori and I recommend the wording here that masks are gonna be required by all staff and students in common areas, buses, halls, offices, and collaborative activities when social distancing is difficult. When you're in your classroom and maintaining social distance, face masks may not be required. That depends on the health needs of the people in the space. So basically, most of the time, masks are gonna be required unless you're eating or physical activity type of thing. If you're able to social distance, the example would be, if you're in a high school classroom, maybe it's an elective and there's only 8 kids in the class, and they're able to spread out with 6 feet between them. If the teacher wants to allow no mask because there is social distancing, then that would be an option there. But most of the time, K-12, you got 20, 24 kids in a room, masks are gonna be required under our recommendation.
But like Phi-Ed, they could distance because they'll be outside or in the gym, right? So
Right, there'd be a big difference in my mind between inside and outside. And then what you just said is correct. It wouldn't be just Phi-Ed, but anytime that they're socially distanced, they would not be required. It'd be up to the individual teacher's situation.
My feeling on that, Kale, is I think we got too much gray and wiggle room in there. I think it needs to be more black and white on this issue. I think if they're in the building, the masks are on. I don't think even if you are able to social distance, I still think you need to have the masks on. I think you're going to have problems where your kid's going to say, well, I'm socially distanced, and vice versa. And then I think you're going to open a can of worms. So my advice is, if you're in the building, I think you need to have the mask on. If you're outside, social distance, I think the masks are good to go. Or you're able to take them off.
Well, Aaron and Lori are here and they can speak for themselves. I'd be fine with that personally.
I support that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
So if someone has a health condition that they don't wear a mask, which is acceptable under the current order, right? Are they gonna be told they have to stay home then, or what's that look like?
No, if you bring a note from a doctor saying that you can't wear a mask because of asthma or anxiety or any other reason, then you just won't be required to wear it. And when the kids ask, why are they not wearing a mask? The answer by the staff will be,
I guess I'm curious as to what
saying,
would be a health reason that a kid would not be able to wear a mask.
That's up to their doctor.
yeah, anything the doctor.
Yeah, I understand that, but there's no condition right now where a kid is not able to wear a mask.
Well, it's in the executive order that there's reasons that you don't have to wear a mask, so.
The most
There's-
common
Right.
reason is probably going to be asthma in a child.
I would say asthma or COPD are your two two most common, and not many kids are walking around with COPD.
Just to clarify, Zub, outside activities, no mask, correct?
Yeah, as long as you can keep 6 feet, RJ, you're good to go.
Yep, good.
Yeah. I just think I don't want to have too much gray area. I think you're in the building, the mask should be on, whether or not you have social distancing or not. Even if you have 4 people in the room, it's just easier. Then there's no discussion like, hey, I don't need a mask, or I'm 6 feet, I don't need to put this mask on. It just takes that out of the teacher's hands too. They don't have to worry about it. You're in the building, you have a mask on.
And I thinking of especially some of our smaller kids, but again, 5 years is currently under the mandate. Other places have had that, so all of our kiddos are gonna hit that or be older. I thought it might be not having them with the mask on in some of the situations, but when we tie in the health of a teacher, then we start having those exceptions. Is why can this class not wear a mask, but this one does because my teacher's got hypertension or diabetes or whatever. So I'm good with what you're proposing, Zub.
Yeah, I think the easier, the better.
I think it's also the case, at least K-8, I mean, there won't be any classrooms where that are big enough for kids to be 6 feet apart.
True.
So is it an option to not make a decision on masks and follow the order? And then in that say, if it would get stopped, you follow the order until our next board meeting?
I think we need to decide it today. And even if the order's there, it only extends to 9/28, and based on the stay at home that was overturned, I think if in fact the legislature doesn't overturn it prior to 9/28, Colleen, I would be extremely surprised if either the legislature or the state Supreme Court allows them to extend it. And then you come back. I think we just make it, we follow the mandate, the state mandate, as long as it's in process. But what we're proposing, and basically what Zub has said, is pretty much following what those guidelines are already.
Well, if there's any truth to it, there's a story that just broke on NBC 15 that is leaning towards Tony Evers prohibiting all Wisconsin schools from starting this year with in-person classes.
Yeah, that come out earlier today. Or not.
Yeah, that might very well happen.
He's awesome.
So we could argue about this all night long, and I don't know what's going to matter. So,
well, we have to act as if that's not going to happen because we don't know what's going to happen. I would suggest any plan we approve, whatever it is, we say it's good, at least for the whole semester, or until other board action changes it.
Yeah, just leave it till any other additional board action.
Yeah, we can change it at any time, but I think we need to say this is good either for the school year or for the semester, and I'm okay either way, I guess.
I don't see, honestly, guys, I don't see this mask issue going away anytime in the near future, even once the mandate's up. If, we are still in school, at least until January. I really don't. I mean, in order for staff and everybody else to feel safe, I think you're going to see that nationwide. And right now our numbers aren't looking good. So I don't see us getting away from masks in anytime in the future. So.
Well, and I think it's simple too. I mean, one of our jobs is to provide the safest environment we possibly can. I don't know if we can really argue the fact that wearing a mask is safer than not wearing a mask in a building with a bunch of high school students, middle school students, elementary students. So I'm on board with just keeping it very black and white like Nick kind of did. I think we kind of talked about putting it the way we did just to have some options there, but I don't have any issue with going black and white. And if you're in the building, you have a mask on and take advantage of nice days and maybe get your classes out and doing that. I've talked to our music people. I've talked to our Hvac people about options of outdoor type stuff. And I'm going to have conversations with our entire staff about if there's days where they can do some things outdoors. That's a great thing.
Yeah, I think you're going to need scheduled mask breaks. If nothing else, you can just get them outside for 5 to 10 minutes. Hey, take off your mask. I'm not saying every class, but you're definitely going to have to get some of those scheduled in.
Okay, so I think everything else on here we were pretty comfortable with. We'll change our recommendation for masks to read, state and local orders will be followed. In the absence of a state and local order, face masks will be required for all staff and students while inside the building, except for eating.
Are you gonna keep buses on there?
Yeah.
Yes, I would.
I'll make a motion to approve that reopening plan.
Second.
Can we make sure it gets posted in Spanish too, please?
Kaylee's working on it right now.
Okay, got a motion by Hermanson, second by Bronco to approve the plan with the change to the mask requirement as discussed. Discussion.
So we're gonna make everybody wear a mask whether they need it or not.
Unless they have a doctor's excuse.
Define need it. We need it.
If this was as bad as everybody thinks it is, there'd be a hell of a lot more people in the hospital and dead.
I think 156,000 dead people is kind of impressive, but that's just numbers.
It's not in Lafayette County, there isn't.
Joe, I don't like the mask either, but I want to do whatever we can to get school open with kids in the building. I think that's the most important thing, regardless of whether we like the mask or not. I think we need to get kids back to school.
How does it work if we have a student or a staff member that has a doctor's note? So we learned at the last meeting that this opens us to liability if it's not followed and we have a rule, right? So how does it work if we have a staff or a student that has a doctor's note? I would assume with HIPAA, we can't share that information. What's going to prohibit us from having any kind of legal action against us because of that? Or how are we going to enforce it? So if a student comes that doesn't have a note and they won't wear a mask, how is that being enforced? What are our protocols going to be?
Well, their other option is you wear a mask while you're in the building. If you choose not to wear a mask, we have the other option of virtual learning.
Okay, well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking how it's going to be handled that day. Are
They
we
go
going to,
home.
and their parents don't answer? What do you do then?
No rosy bucks.
And they're in that, they're in
Just trying to like think
area.
of these things.
Yeah, that isolation room, that would be for, if we thought they were positive, they would be there.
It'd
right?
be treated the same way as any other dress code violation currently is. If they come with a shirt as alcohol or drugs and we say, change shirt, no, I'm not taking the shirt off, but same process, disciplinary, progressive.
I just am really nervous about the legal part of it, because there's people that want to make examples of situations. And I don't want to open us up to a huge lawsuit. And that's what scares me about this. I get the health and human aspect of it, and there's part of me that thinks virtual learning is a better option than trying to go down this road with the legal ramifications that can happen.
That's a good point, and I will add to our list, I didn't say it, but I will add it, that masks will be worn in all these places all the time unless you have a doctor's note saying that you can't do it. So that way we're following our own rule.
You know, I kind of thought the same thing, Colleen, that when we first proposed it, even though I'm a proponent of mask wearing, but I don't like mandates. I don't like being told what to do, but what's doing right. But the other thing is I truly believe that unless I will take my chances of a potential lawsuit versus knowing that we won't be able to keep the school open and we'll have to go. Then we should just go virtual then.
I 100% agree.
You know, I was concerned about the idea of potential litigation, but you know, I'll take those chances, even though reducing risk and exposure is one of our mandates here too, but just see what happens. But we don't keep the school, but the school doesn't stay open.
I think you could imagine all kinds of different ways schools will be sued in the wake of this pandemic, and this is just one of them. I mean,
oh yeah,
we can't prevent ourselves from doing something that's proven to work, you know, just because we're afraid of being sued, because there's probably a dozen other things that potentially open us for liability. And, you know, attorneys have to be cautious in the advice they give you when they're going to say, yes, you're more at risk, but they didn't say anything about the 12 other areas we didn't ask them about that also put us at higher risk.
Right, we could be sued at any time for anything, but I've talked to our attorney and I'm comfortable saying he's comfortable recommending that if you have a doctor's note, you can require them to wear it. And if they don't wear it, you can say you're now a member of our virtual school, just stay at home and we'll educate you that way.
We should, I mean, so it was mentioned, maybe we should just start 100% virtual. If, you know, that should be part of this discussion. Some other districts that had decided to go in person have changed course and are now 100% virtual to start the year. I don't know at what point we would change course and do that, but
I think, well, my personal feeling is I think you better have that plan B in your back pocket and ready to go. Because I think it's just, it could be a flip of a switch at any point that we're forced to go that route. So, I mean, I think you have to have that I think we should already be planning on that. And hopefully we don't have to use it, but you know, that's just, I guess, my opinion right now. I think we need to have our you know, plan A and plan B. And our plan A right now is we're going to try to go 5 days a week, and it doesn't work. You know, our plan B is going to be this.
I totally agree. Almost certainly at some point, we're going to be home for 2 weeks once the kids test positive. Yeah, so we are preparing for that. And we feel like we're much better prepared for that when it happens this year than we were last March.
And all the health experts and education experts have been stressing the need for face-to-face instruction being better, so much better than virtual, and also the huge issue with the lack of socialization, especially with the younger kids. I think that we should try to be open, and that's the reason we went with that, is try to be as open for as long as we can in the classroom.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the big thing is too, and I think we can touch on that, is I think we still have to pay pretty close to attention to our positivity rate in the community and what's going on, not just Wisconsin, but Lafayette County. And we need to keep a close eye on that. And we need to be in contact with the local health department as far as what is our positive rate. Are we climbing? Are we 6 to 8%? Are we 8 to 12%? We 12 to 18%? I said that figure there plays a huge, I think, determinant on whether what we decide to do. I mean, if we got positive rates that are right around that 10%, I think, that's a time. I've read recommendations that you shouldn't be opening your public schools, and even people who are proposing that we get into school, if you've got a community rate right now of 6 to 8%. So
but shouldn't those recommendations be coming from our public health director though?
Yeah, but these are
As
coming down.
opposed
I've seen a couple. Those are from the CDC recommending, like, hey, I know, like out east, they're recommending that, hey, we shouldn't be opening schools if we've got a community positivity rate of above 8%. Now, I don't know what our exact numbers. We've had a big bump here, a little bump here in the last 2 weeks. I don't even know what our percent, I know what our state is, but I don't know what our actual Lafayette County is.
Well, Lafayette County would be below 1%.
But it shouldn't be Lafayette County, should it? Just the community of
Just
Darlington?
community itself.
The school district, the township?
Yeah, community spread.
So is the CDC gonna put recommendations out for all areas of the country or just the Northeast?
No, that was just one of the guys that was from the CDC. He was just using that as a reference point as the Northeast right now, because they have no. I mean, their fire is basically calmed down, and so they're just saying, I mean, if you're reading the news, following, I mean, the Midwest is the next hot spot, and it's kind of moving its way up from the Sun Belt, moving its way up to the Midwest. I mean, Kentucky, Ohio, and you're seeing an uptick in numbers as well. I mean, let's face it, we're having 1,000 a day here in Wisconsin. Yes, we are testing a lot more. So I think it's just something that we need to really keep a close eye on going forward, is just that a number like that, and what are we comfortable with? And so that's just my opinion.
All right, so we do have a motion on the floor that's been first moved and seconded. Are there any other details on this plan that we want to tweak or anything? We talked about masks a lot. There's a lot of other details on there.
My only thing is that I think the plan is a good one, but we could sit here and argue about things on that for 2 hours tonight, but the reality is whatever's on that plan could ultimately change in the first week or two. As the school opens up, you're going to find out what things work and what don't work. And I think we just need to leave it up to administration to figure out what works and doesn't work and adjust accordingly. So.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Okay, Bronco,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Hermanson,
Yes.
Reichling,
Yes.
Rickers,
No.
okay, Schilling,
I'm on the fence, but it ain't gonna matter, so you might as well put a yes down.
Siggenthaler, yes. Wolf,
Yes.
Zuber
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Item 17, discussion and action regarding fall sports. 17A is football.
I may turn this over to Mr. Lancaster and Mr. Reichling. They represented us at a recent meeting at the sports conference. And they probably came up with 10, 15 things for each sport that the conference would like to have some consistency on. We can talk about all of them, but these are the ones that we thought maybe where board action would be appropriate. So, Mr. Lancaster, you want to take this over? Mr. Reichling, one of you?
I'll start off, and Pat, feel free to jump in whenever you'd like. So we had a meeting with all superintendents, principals, at least those who could attend last week, to start discussions on, after the WIA meeting, not going with the Southwest plan, to try to have some uniformity throughout the conference. Obviously masks was one of the things that we were discussing. We kind of took an informal poll. Everybody was in favor of mask requirements for spectators at that point, but I know most had not talked to their boards yet, and my stance was I'm not going to make any votes on these details until I've had a chance to talk with our board and kind of see where they fall at that point. So fan attendance restrictions, cheerleaders, pep band, travel restriction, masks for spectators were some of the common topics we discussed. We discussed everything from fan attendance, no fans, to each participant gets 2 tickets, 4 tickets, whatever it might be. That may be different for outdoor activities versus indoor activities. So just kind of looking for some guidance of where you guys are at and what you're comfortable with. Like I said, this is for football here. We do have another meeting on Wednesday afternoon. We're going to kind of share kind of where we're at as a district, and then have a conference kind of conversation of what everybody's comfortable with. So I'm just trying to get some input before I go back to the meeting on Wednesday.
I had an opportunity to watch the Board of Controls meeting with the WIAA when they made the start dates for the various fall sports. And with that, I guess my thought on it is, for the items, I would like for us to try to make it as much as normal as possible. I know we'll have some reduced schedules due to the start times for both volleyball and football. And as long as we're doing spectators, kind of the guidelines have been if you can't social distance, and I think that would be hard to enforce. Masks should be required for both indoor and outdoor. As far as for the indoor, especially this fall, would be volleyball. I'm not sure if we want to restrict to the indoor stuff, but I think for everything else, since we're asking people to be masked, then then we shouldn't have to limit attendance. I don't know if there's going to be a major issue with volleyball, since again, you're not social distancing. So, and you're requiring the mask, that shouldn't be as big of an issue. But I would like us to try to mimic a normal season as much as possible for all of our sports.
I'm not in favor of having to wear a mask at the football game. We've got the hill, we've got both sides of seating. People can social distance all over. That's just my opinion. I do understand girls volleyball. You probably gonna wanna look at something as far as masks or something like that in attendance, unless they can social distance. I haven't been to a volleyball game in 25 years. I don't know how many people attend that. I have no idea. But if you're gonna have 20, 30 students sitting in a student section and you're gonna make them mask up all day, I would imagine you'd want them to mask up while they're screaming and cheering. But I see no reason why anything outside activities, we're gonna let our students, as long as they social distance outside, be without a mask. In the playground and those type of things, I don't see any issues on the football field.
So for the stands, but for like the adult, for fans coming in, I mean, how do we enforce social distancing at the concession?
You put up a sign, you advise it, you try to follow it, that's the best you can do. Are you gonna have somebody run around checking masks at the football game? Otherwise,
It's easier to figure out if you've got a mask on than if you're 6 feet apart, but that's just me.
And like I said, we're just gonna advise and ask.
Well, and then the other part of that too, I mean, just to think about RJ is, would you say 15 minutes at less than 6 feet is considered not social distancing? So who's gonna keep the clock on who's been together for 15 minutes or not, you know? You just have to put the expectations out there and trust that they'll follow them. I mean,
And I would expect the same for cross country also. I mean, I know I don't know, there might be 10, 15 different teams. I think they can do their part, the coaches, and tell everybody to spread out as much as they can and tell the parents or spectators to do the same thing. And I don't want Joe Schilling running behind him huffing and puffing like he used to either.
I know
guess
the
just-
shortest path.
What's that?
I know the shortest path.
I mean, I guess me thinking, I'm kind of in agreement with RJ. I think the simplest thing was you just require a mask when you're on school grounds. Yeah, it's not ideal to wear a mask at a football game, but if I want to watch my kid play football, I think it's a lot easier to have a mask. And you know, theoretically, you should have a mask and still social distance. I just think it would be easier for everybody involved if you make it as simple. It's black or white, and you go from there. I would not be opposed either, even in volleyball indoors. If you say, hey, you can have the volleyball players can have, you know, their parents. I mean, ideally, we want to have a student section as much as we could, but unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to be a real good idea.
I think that again, it's trying the normalcy. I'm trying to think things as normal as possible. And no, I hear what you're saying, Red, but you know, I'm just looking at if we have, you know, in the stands and stuff.
What are you going to do with football players? Are they going to wear a mask?
No, but we're trying to reduce as much risk as we can, Joe. I mean, we're trying to minimize risk. Obviously, anything we do is not 100%.
I understand that, but that football player has to walk through class every day, but then on the football field he doesn't have to.
Joe, they were even talking on the WIAA. We're talking at some of the larger cross country meets. They were going to require the runners to have a mask for the first 100 yards or 100 meters. That was actually brought up.
We're not even going to have sports seasons.
I 100% agree with you, Joe. I mean, we don't know that, but I think it's hard for us to sit here. I'm still in awe that we're still having them, you know, especially these high contact sports. I don't know how they're going to get away with it. I really don't. I mean, you're already starting to see schools now that are popping up that are having, you know, positives, weight room related. You know, we've had 2 schools. I think one of them in our football conference had a number of athletes that tested positive. You know, so I think we're trying to minimize as much risk as we can. I think we're all kidding ourselves if we don't think it's going to happen. It's not an if, but it's going to be a when, and then how we go about handling it.
We could sell cardboard cutouts.
Yep, we could.
So let me just throw this at you. You know, just kind of from the tone of the meeting last week, I kind of got a feeling as if the mask requirement was going to be something that every school was going to support. We didn't really get into indoor, outdoor, but I would think both of those. So as a conference, if we choose to do that, are we going to be a part of that?
We almost
If we
have
want
to.
Yeah, if we want our kids to play, I mean, that's what everybody else wants to do, I would say yes.
Yeah, if it comes from the conference, that's gonna be the requirement, then yeah, then.
And would you rather have spectators wear a mask and have the sport, or pull what the Big 8 did, where they are canceled all fall sports already?
And I think, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of the big questions was if the conference majority votes, you know, for all of this stuff, does the conference rule?
Right.
You know, if the conference votes to limit spectators, even if we maybe don't agree with it, you know, or they vote to require masks, does the conference rule? And that was a question we kind of, you know, were curious about as a board.
Well, I would think our student athletes and people would still want our kids to play, but I'm guessing and assuming the conference right now is still looking for guidance from their peers or their schools as we speak. So if we would happen to vote, we don't think we need a mask outdoors, and maybe another school or 2 or 3 voted the same way, maybe the conference would say, okay, we got a compromise, we're going that way. I don't know. I don't think they're decided yet, are they?
No, that's why we
Yeah,
voted
right.
to, again, have another meeting on Wednesday, because there was gonna be some board
Sure.
meetings over the course of this week.
To your question, Pat, I think we're obligated to follow whatever the majority of the conference is, just from a competition standpoint.
What would you guys think of having a motion and giving Pat and Aaron the authority to just vote and go whatever the conference does? We're gonna follow on all these things.
With that being said, I mean, I would like you guys to let them know what way we voted, of course. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and
Yeah, I'll
that's-
share, I can share what has been given to us, but, ultimately, I agree with some of you that, conference makes a decision. We're part of that conference. We need to do that, follow that as best we can.
Yeah,
Like
so we
Matt's
can-
saying, we can vote however we want to vote. You can give us direction on all these things and we'll cast whatever vote you tell us to, but then in the end, we'll follow whatever the majority is.
Well, you have to follow it anyway. I mean, if you're the minority, it doesn't matter what you think.
Exactly.
Well, we don't have to. As a school, we can say, we're gonna do
We could
this.
scrimmage each other.
Well, and they can say, well, we're not gonna come play you then. I don't know if that would happen or not, but
So basically, you're following the majority.
if that's what the board decides, yes.
Yeah, I mean, from a
We're simply just giving Pat and Aaron the direction to which way the board wants to go, then it's ultimately up to the SWAL conference. If they vote, then we'll might have to follow what the SWAL conference goes on.
Well, you got 2 options. You follow what the conference does, or you don't participate in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you will follow whatever the SWAL does.
So do we need a motion here or something, or we got more to talk about per conference and what we're gonna do? Or are we just talking about
If
the
we,
outdoor sports and the indoor sports, whether or not you need masks or not?
Oh, there's a
so
whole,
we should, yeah,
I know there's a list. Are we gonna?
I would say there's
That's what I'm
two
saying.
things. We should have action that says we are going to do what comes out of that SWAL meeting, even if it's not what we want. And then if we want to tell Aaron and Pat to advocate for a position on any of them, we should do that tonight too.
Sure, I know we got a
Agreed.
whole bunch of these. Are we gonna go through, do you need action on this, the fan attendance is what I'm asking you? Right now, or are we gonna
We can,
lump everything
we can
together?
lump however you like.
Put them all together.
Okay,
well,
If it's the, do
The only thing I would
conference.
say about that is, I'm not a fan of limiting outdoor. I'm a fan of social distancing and recommending that, but I struggle with limiting outdoor, but I do think that we have to be careful in an enclosed area such as the gym. And I don't want those kids to not have the supports that they want there, but I also don't think you can have a packed gym.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we could maybe pick off the easy ones here, right? So
I mean,
I think
where is the mask inside out? You follow somewhere to what our opening plan is. Inside the school is required mask. And that goes for sporting events inside the school.
yeah, I agree with that.
It's strongly recommended that you wear one, but you're not required to.
Well, I don't know about that part. I think the
Oh, whatever.
I'm just saying, if we want to break this up, if we can agree on it, the indoor stuff should mirror what we're having
Yeah.
during the school day.
agree. Yeah.
So, I mean, if everybody's in agreement on that, we can check that off. Any indoor, fall, extracurricular activity, masks are required.
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Do we need a motion on that?
Go with that.
Well, let's kind of get through something.
Sounds like we got consensus, but
Okay, that's fine.
you can make a motion if you like.
Well, ultimately though, are we all in agreement it's gonna come from the swell anyway? So I don't think we need a motion, just our opinion.
Consensus.
I like
So
it.
the biggest thing right now would be, do we want them to advocate for masks outdoors or no masks outdoors? Correct?
Well, you can vote on that one then.
I'm not a fan of mass outdoors. I think you can
Agree.
social distance.
That's where I'm at.
I'm not a fan of outdoors either.
Problem with all of it is enforcing it. I mean, it's much easier to enforce in the gym, outdoors. It'd be real hard. I mean, you can
Right.
make the rule, but you're not gonna get everybody following it.
Right.
And you go back to follow what our opening plan is. Self-explanatory.
I guess I would be the only one in the minority on that.
I mean, we can vote on that one. If you make me choose, I'd probably say require a mask for everything too.
I think the thing that we all have to remember too is these are activities that our students are choosing to be involved in with their parents. You have to go to school. That's truancy and illegal if you don't. But you don't have to be involved in an extracurricular activity and you don't have to go. I mean, we invested a lot of money in camera system and hopefully we can make all that work this year, you know, to help live stream things too, so.
You don't have to go. I'm unclear though. You don't have to go because you don't want to wear a mask or you're feeling unsafe if people aren't wearing a mask, just so I know where you're coming from.
Right.
I would say either way.
Either way, you can watch the live stream.
Like at graduation, I took a mask with me and I intended on wearing it, but then I felt completely comfortable not. I had no one around me but people that, you know, in my family and I didn't, so I didn't wear it. But there's plenty of times that I wear a mask because I'm in situations I'm uncomfortable with, or I want to, I guess, selfishly protect myself in my own mind that it's going to, whether you believe in that or not. But and then there's the theory of wearing it for other people. I get all of that, but I just feel like an extracurricular is a choice.
I'm with Bob. I think, obviously, I didn't vote for the opening plan, but we should be consistent. And masks inside, yes, outside, no. That's consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that.
So I feel there's a majority that feels that way.
Yeah.
Right?
And I can get a feel for the conference as we go through that meeting on Wednesday too.
Right. And the thing again, just to reiterate, Aaron, when you and Pat go, is that it's, you know, we'll follow what direction, you know,
Right.
I think we're obligated to.
Yeah.
So
The
what
only
about
other two things that I would like a little guidance on, I think the rest of it, Pat and I are comfortable kind of having those discussions, but travel restrictions and then limiting of number of teams at a single event.
The only big ones you have for this fall, and correct me, is we have the one big Darlington invite for cross country, correct?
Correct. That we're hosting, yeah.
Hosting, and are we hosting a volleyball invitational this year with the
No, we are
different
not,
change in
no.
the start time? So the only thing that would be impactful, and everything that the WIA said is like the girls golf is the safest sport we've got going on, you know, or stuff. But for the cross country, if it's outside, you know, I guess that's what, 20 teams?
27 teams. Farthest away, Cashed, I think, is the farthest team away. I can tell you Janesville canceled their Midwest Classic today, along with Marshall canceled their invite as well.
Okay.
You are starting to see a little bit of a pattern.
Marshall's a big one, ain't it?
They're both massive. I mean, they're both massive, but
I was wondering about the Janesville one.
I was waiting for that one. I mean, that's huge, you know, and plus being on a city park, that makes it even more difficult. Marshall's the same way.
Do you know, Pat, if some of those schools that are that far away would even show up at our invitation or don't know?
As of right now, no one has emailed us to cancel a contract. Right now, we have contracts with 26 other teams. We're the 27th. But that was a big question that came up at the conference was, do we go back to what it used to be where you do a conference only schedule, kind of like we're doing in track where we do 3 or 4 conference teams and do mini meets as opposed to, you know, hosting those large invites.
What do you think, Pat?
I honestly don't feel comfortable bringing 27 teams onto the property. You're talking about last year, that was 60 varsity boys sitting on the start line. That was 60 varsity girls sitting on the start line, about 120 JV kids and hundreds of fans. That's just a lot of people. And that's just all it takes is one person to come back and say, I had a positive test. And I have no way to prove who you were next to, who you were touching, anything like that. I know it's not probably the most popular opinion, but my recommendation is we try to par that down to a smaller event. Again, still try to bring in 5-6 teams, you know.
You talked to Arnie, what does he think?
I've talked to Coach Mee, he talked to him today, actually. You know, he obviously would like to have as close to what he can with the Darlington invite. But, you know, I made it kind of clear that it just might not be an option because again, the conference, one of the things they want to vote on is a conference only schedule. Doing, like I said, those mini meets, bringing in a couple of teams around the area, like a Shellsburg, or not, I'm sorry, Benton, Cuba City, Southwestern, you know, has a cross-country team, Albany, bringing in a few of those outside areas to have about a 9 or 10 team group that you can kind of rotate through.
And I'm assuming the only reason you have this is obviously it's probably a good fundraiser for the school, right?
Yep.
And you get to run different competitions from different levels, like divisions too, is that correct? Or are they all the same? When we get 7 schools, are they from one division kind of, or is it wide open?
They're mostly Division III schools. There's a couple of D2, I think, in there. Yep. But mostly it's Division III. The problem is cross-country, much like track, long ago when people had bigger teams, you did a lot of duels. You know, people show up on a Tuesday night, you'd run 2 teams. It kind of went away and it went more towards these big invites. And that's now what track and cross-country has turned into, is just pretty much invites. So it makes it a little more difficult with these sports because now we got to almost kind of go back to that old system to try and get fewer teams.
So it really doesn't put us student athletes at a disadvantage if we have a smaller tournament.
No, and
they're still getting the running, they're still getting all this.
And that was one thing that Coach Meany and I talked about today was I still would love to get the same number of competitions. It's just, yep, they're going to be a little bit smaller, maybe not the same level of competition because you don't have that many runners. But no, I would still say we would work as a conference and as a group to make sure our student athletes still got the opportunity to compete the number of times that they're already scheduled to.
So that big invitational, could you break it up into 4 days or whatever?
I wondered about that too, like an 8 a.m. race, a 10 a.m. race like that, but
Yeah, shifts or different days.
Yeah, there's different ways you could try to run it. The question is, if you start changing it that much, number one, are all those teams going to show up anyway? You know, are we better off, since we already have a timer and officials that day, to just try to kind of pare that down to, again, a smaller group, and we just have a smaller invite that day or a smaller race that day instead of the 27 teams.
You know what's gonna happen with the spring green? That's usually the following weekend.
Haven't heard anything. The only 2 I heard today were Janesville and Marshall.
So Pat, your recommendation, would it be strictly conference teams or more like a geographical kind of thing?
I would look at a geographical, just keeping it closer to home, limiting the number and keeping it closer to home. Again, though, if the conference votes to go that conference only system, then that's gonna limit us.
well, and I think too, it's gonna change every day. I mean, we're seeing significant outbreak in the Argyle-Blanchardville area yesterday and today. I mean, businesses are closing and numbers are really high. So, if we had an event on Friday night with that town, I would certainly think that, I think it happened to the youth soccer or baseball tonight. They were supposed to play Blanchardville or Argyle and they canceled it because of it. So I think it's gonna change every day too with what's safe at that point.
I'd be more in favor of the geographical area right now.
I mean, I guess that's the question is, are you comfortable with the board having 27 teams come onto the property? and bringing that many.
Bob brought up Spring Green. Is that a big one?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, if we're not gonna allow to have somebody have 27 teams here, why would we be going to one that has 20 or 30 teams? It's really the same thing.
But that's travel, again, that's travel restriction. That's why Aaron and I, that's why we put that on there. Are we comfortable with sending, say Janesville had it? Are we comfortable sending our kids
Yeah.
into that? Or do we want to look at more of a, let's stay in our area, let's go to these smaller meets?
That'd be interesting to see if Spring Green's gonna still have theirs, because that's on the golf course.
Pat, I 100% agree with you. I think that's something, quite honestly, I don't know how they're justifying cross country being a low risk sport. I was actually kind of shocked at the mere fact that you're going to have kids coming in huffing and puffing at the end, and how you're going to keep those kids separated. And, they talked about wearing masks the first 100 yards. I just don't know. I mean, those kids are blowing constantly. I'm just kind of in shock as to how they labeled it.
They obviously haven't worked the finishing shoot at a cross country invite. Been spit on and everything else.
Yeah. And my other thing is we need to have a plan too, how we're going to handle where we have let's say we were to have one of these tournaments or one of these invites, and we know that we're scheduled to play a team that has community spread. And they're still insisting, hey, we're going to show up. I mean, are we comfortable telling them you guys need to stay home? Which I think that may happen. I mean, they could call and say, well, we don't have any on the team. Well, how do we know that? I mean, did you test everybody on the team? Did you do that? And if we know we have a community spread, i.e. like a couple of communities that were mentioned earlier. So I think we need to have a plan for that too, where if we do have something scheduled and we know there's a community outbreak, are we comfortable saying, you know what, we prefer you guys stay home and we'll, look at it at a different time.
Maybe we could make them walk past one of those $6,000 thermometers.
Nick, how is that working right now with the baseball tournaments you're going to? Do you have to report your numbers in for something, or how are they controlling that?
No, they are not control. Well, like for instance, we were just down in Milwaukee. They did not report it, but they had a bunch of Chicago teams that backed out just due to if they come into Wisconsin, they have to 15-day quarantine.
Do they make you wear masks?
We're not testing kids. What's that, Joe?
Do you have to wear a mask at that?
Do we have to wear a mask?
Yeah.
No, they do not require you to wear a mask. But I would say probably the last 2 weeks, you definitely saw an uptick in the amount of masks worn.
And how many teams are involved in the Little League tournaments that you're going to?
How many? Well, there's numbers of teams there, but there's a number of teams in the actual tournament itself, but they're not all there at the same time. So they stagger them. Like, for instance, they don't allow like the batting cages to be open, and there's certain things that they do to try to eliminate as much as they can.
So we could stagger with cross country too, right?
You'd have to make sure that might be difficult. I would say you could, but you're going to have to ensure you got to get everybody out before you let the next group come in. And I don't know how you do that. You got people that are going to show up an hour early, or you got people that, you're going to try to get everybody who's going to want to try to hang around. 27 teams is a lot.
Going back to Pat's recommendation, you said you weren't real comfortable with that number, but we're not talking about eliminating the invitational, just maybe scaling it down a bit, correct?
Yeah, I'm still open to hosting an event that day. Again, we have the timing system, we have the officials lined up. I would just, and that's one thing Coach Meehee and I talked about today was, scaling that back to still make it a possibility, but not as big of an event as what it normally is.
That might just happen on its own with schools that decide they don't want to participate.
Yeah,
but I'd be looking at more geographical right now, unless the SWAL comes up with something different.
Well, I understand that, but geographical, that Spring Green's still closed. There's 27 teams at Spring Green. What the hell's the use of doing a geographical, Bob?
Well, and talking about.
That's their choice.
I agree, but it's our choice whether or not we participate.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna limit ours, why the hell would we go to one that's just as big? So I think that needs to be the question.
Well, and the geographical thing comes up with, what are we gonna do for travel restrictions? Are we gonna allow kids on a bus for an hour to a football game or a cross-country meet or
we gotta send
a
2
golf?
buses.
Right.
They may do that.
Or are we gonna say, I don't know how liability works, but the parents have to get them there? I don't know.
Aaron, what do you feel on the invite, 27 teams, what's your feeling on it?
I think you're asking for trouble to host an event that big or to go to an event that big. That's why
Sure.
had the number of team participants at events as well. You know, not just the restriction of travel, but you know, how many teams do we want to be at, or do we want at an event where we're at?
And I agree with, I mean, that's kind of where I'm going. I agree, but I'm not, cross country is not my cup of tea and I'm not looking to step on anybody's toes. But
Do we look at how
I
many
agree,
teams
but-
or how many people? Like a football team of 60 kids, is that the same as 3 teams of cross country? Like how,
I think you're talking about 27 possible different towns.
Yeah.
Compared to as just 2 different towns and 2 different outbreaks, you know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
You
you
can
know,
still do it geographically, but if somebody, say our restriction's 40 miles, 40-mile radius, and the next town, you go 40 miles, and theirs is 40, you've got 80 miles in there that they could have played somebody farther away the week before.
well, and it doesn't even.
I think you need to limit it. I guess
They
we've
could have
talked
just
about
been
this
in a restaurant.
enough. If you can limit it down, that's what we need to do, but there's no need to limit cars and then go and play in one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no,
in
I
Spring
agree.
Green,
I agree.
30 miles away, that's
Well,
got 27 or 30 in it.
I agree with Aaron that you're asking for trouble if you host that event or you go to that event somewhere else. I mean,
Fair enough.
I just think that's the way it is. Because again, all it takes is one person saying, I got COVID. You don't know who you're standing next to. You don't know who you were next to, how long, anything like that. So
So we all kind of agree on that?
Think so.
I agree. We're gonna limit it down. That's what we need to do.
We've agreed on the concept. I don't think
Yep.
we've come up with any numbers.
Yeah, I don't know what the magic number is. I mean, 27, I'm not comfortable with,
gonna
or I
change
am.
tomorrow.
I don't know what the number in between is,
Well, I
right?
think when you talk to your conference, you know, maybe you'll find out what their feeling is, you know, and
Yep.
we can build it from there.
And like I
What you
said,
guys are comfortable with.
Like I said, I think you and Aaron got a general consensus.
All right, that's travel restrictions. What's next?
Did we come up with a clear fan attendance?
Yeah, so do we want to limit number of tickets available?
I know
No.
that's something the conference is gonna talk about that one pretty in depth, I think.
Well, we'd have to.
Are you talking about indoor or outdoor?
I think everything.
Well, I guess my feeling is on outdoor, we've got more seating than pretty much anybody in the conference, especially with the hill and both sides. I don't think it's a need, at least in Darlington. Maybe if there was a playoff game, if there was a playoff game, if we get to that point, maybe you need to talk about something like that then. But at least outside right now, my feeling is no. I haven't been to a volleyball game in 25 years, so I don't know how many people attend them on it for a JV game or you guys would know better. I mean, if they're wearing masks in a volleyball game, are we still able to get some decent social distance in our large gym?
My biggest concern with volleyball is not the varsity, it's the JV and the freshmen, because we play those two at the same time, and we're only able to pull out about 5 rows of the bleachers, because those those courts run sideways. So that's my biggest concern. I think, Aaron, you and I talked about that. That's gonna be the difficult part, is there's not a lot of social distancing for those freshman JV games, because there's not a lot of room.
Could you move one of those to the Dems?
We talked about that. The only concern there is obviously you're spreading more people into both buildings, so you just have to have more cleaning involved,
Yeah.
but that's a possibility.
Well, in varsity too, for volleyball, you play Cuba City, there's no social distancing. It's packed on both sides. There's standing room on the stage. I mean, it's.
Yeah. Last
Well,
year,
One thing just to kind of keep in mind, even if we don't limit fans for outdoor events, we're going to have to limit seating in the bleachers at least. We're going to have to mark off, to keep our social distancing, things like that. We'll have to do that. But, as far as the hill, things like that, we can try to do what we did at graduation and have signs and things like that. But again, we'll see what the conference has to say about it.
I'm comfortable with 4 tickets per student for volleyball. As long as, we can use both gyms. I know that's some extra cleaning, but I hate to say that a kid playing can't at least have their parents there, and it sounds like
How
that would
many
be pretty tough.
girls is there in volleyball, would you know off the top of your head?
Judging from their open gyms, I'm gonna say around 30.
Then you have the other team too.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with 4 tickets for each participant for any indoor event.
And then if we can use the Dems gym, I think that would be wise from the, for one of the.
So what do you do with
freshmen.
student participation? Will you have any of that?
No. They can get a ticket from a kid.
So it's 4 per there, so you limit then just the population, because whatever we're looking at for volleyball will carry over into hoops.
So what if you only have 4 people show up and other families have more? I mean, you're gonna keep them out, just let the 4 in?
Hopefully
my
the parents
idea-
will be good at communicating with each other that they have spare tickets.
The other issue, though, is part of the issue of wearing masks is because you cannot social distance correctly. So
Don't forget, we got an ionizer.
exactly.
I guess me, guys, I would just allow just the parents at this point. I mean, you're going to most of these AAU basketball tournaments right now. That's all they're allowing in is 2 parents.
I don't agree with 2.
I mean, I think
There's step
you're gonna
parents and half parents and some grandparents that raise their kids, and I don't think that we can say just a mom and dad is allowed in. And I speak on that from experience, because there's other people in kids' lives that are just as invested as a mom or a dad.
and I totally agree with you, and but we're also facing a pandemic that we haven't seen since 1919. I mean,
Well, maybe when we limit the AAU participation and people shouldn't travel all over hell.
I'm comfortable with the 4 tickets.
That's not very many.
And that was the
Yeah, That's
WIAA.
only 120. That's not very many. I mean,
Okay, so 240, that's 20% of the gym capacity.
yeah, I mean, you're way under what we're saying. Most of these outdoor sporting events that are going on, they're saying 50%. Less is what they're after in some of these states. I mean, you're only at about 130, 140, depending on how many people you got, 130, 140 people per side. That's not very many. I mean, I know you were trying to be safe, but
What's it hold?
what's it all?
I do like 1,000.
Gym holds 1,080, our football field holds 1,600 between the 2 sides.
Yeah, so I think 4 tickets per participant is okay, and we'd still be well under that.
I mean, that only
I would
puts you at
even-
120, 140 people per side.
I would even say,
I guess my question is what
Yeah.
is a board comfortable determining what is considered a mass gathering?
But take that to another step, and everybody's traveling all over the goddamn country. It doesn't matter if it's a mass gathering.
But with that being said, you're talking about 4 parents, and most of the time, their families, they're sitting together. So they're sitting together anyway, and then you social distance amongst that. I just don't think that's a very big number.
So you want each kid to get 6?
That'd be my feeling. I don't know what percent, I don't know how many players are out, but that puts you at what is it, 160 or something like that per side? That doesn't sound like very.
The other thing that we have to remember too, I don't know what other gyms hold, but it's gonna be a conference number too. So if you wanna say we're comfortable with up to 6 tickets per player, then we can do that.
I'd be fine with 6.
I mean, how many kids are on a volleyball team? I don't know.
The other thing that you have to
My rough
remember,
number says 6 is good.
the other thing you have to remember, Red, is, okay, so let's say our varsity reserve is gonna play here first. And they've got 4 tickets, and then our varsity varsity kids have 4 tickets. Are we gonna make everybody empty the gym and then you have to have tickets for varsity and varsity reserve separate? Or do they get to stay? Because if they stay, that doubles quick.
That's why you shouldn't have a limit and paint yourself into the corner. We're either going to be able to host stuff or not host stuff.
And it's not going to be decided by us.
No.
And
I
then,
was just assuming with JV and varsity, there's around 30-some students. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? I thought there's just 30-some students total out for volleyball. It's not like there's 60 or 90. At least when I was there was only varsity, there was only 6 or 7 on the bench for the varsity game. So I was just assuming around 30-some.
if you want up to 6 per student, I'll support that.
Am I fairly close to those numbers, Pat? Around 30-some?
That's what I would be.
So that still puts you at 150, 160 people per side. I don't think you're overdoing anything. If you're trying to limit it at all.
Okay, so that's the 4 to 6 tickets is kind of what we're saying here. Is everybody comfortable with them going with that?
Yeah.
And if whatever decides is different, we're going with that, but.
Says it's 12 kids per team. That's from volleyball coach.
And is there 3? Okay, so we're fairly close then.
Okay, so we're also going to talk about cheerleaders and pep band for football.
Go along with the conference.
I would go along with the conference and whatever they decide on, choose on that.
Okay. What else? Youth football?
Yeah, Ryan Guiley contacted me, wanted to know if we could bring this up. They've talked to some teams like Fenimore. They're still gonna do it. They were able to get insurance, but they wanted to know if they would be allowed to use the practice field.
Platteville is also now involved, and Lancaster's waiting to see what we do.
So right now we have a rule, no outside groups use the school, right? That's our current. Is that wrong?
Yeah, no outside visitors, but these would be our kids.
But it's not a school-sponsored event, right?
Right.
Okay. So we'd have to overturn that to make an exception for a non-school sponsored event to use our facilities.
We haven't done any basketball tournaments or anything over the summer. This would be the first thing like that.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what we're.
I think this would also include your youth basketball stuff that will start up in probably October, November as well, so.
What kind of extra cleaning are we gonna have to do?
Everything for the youth football will be outside. I guess I talked to Ryan, equipment handout, if we did that even at this facility at all, it would be outside, or something like that. We used to use behind the school here, but now, starting last year, Coach let us use a portion of the practice field.
Okay.
I guess there would be no extra cleaning that I know of. I
Locker
mean,
rooms, would they use the locker rooms?
we never,
No.
we never ever used them that I know of.
The only thing for on youth football was they practice at the high school.
Go ahead with it. Let kids be kids.
It wasn't gonna be a problem. You'd make accommodations or whatever.
Well, I guess if it's not gonna cost us anything extra, I'm just talking about football.
Yeah.
And it's only gonna be Darlington students, then I'm comfortable with that. I think these are gonna be case by case basis, because when Aaron brings up basketball, that's a whole nother situation of where they're gonna be in the school, who's gonna keep an eye that they don't leave a certain, the cleaning. That's a whole nother.
Well, that would be if
situation.
they host a tournament versus practice, correct? I mean, that's going to be different.
Yeah. Is anyone not comfortable with youth football?
Go ahead with it.
Okay, I'm not hearing anybody, so I think we're set there. Youth basketball, is that on the agenda? And if we have time for that, let's maybe bring that back later. Or, basketball, however you want to say that.
One quick side question. middle school volleyball, middle school cross-country. We're comfortable with those going along with the high school guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
All right. So is there anything from item 17 that we did not cover? Aaron or Pat, anything you need more
No,
guidance?
I'm comfortable being able to have meeting on Wednesday now.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Move to item 8.
If I can ask one thing, the only thing I would like to know more about is what the protocol is gonna be for reporting a COVID exposure, like within the SWAL. So if everybody's depending on the health department to handle all of that, and all the health directors are on board, or if there's gonna be a report to the SWAL, to the schools, or how that's, maybe you know that, but I would be curious to know what the plan is.
Well, my recommendation Wednesday would be that the athletic directors or activities directors are in contact with each other, make sure we are in the know either way. I don't think I want to wait for a health department person from another county to maybe contact us. That would be my recommendation, is that the AD or the ADs just kind of stay in contact with each other.
Okay.
Okay, so then item 18 is discussion and action regarding youth sports using gyms. So we kind of started that, but as of right now, we haven't allowed that all summer, correct? You know, other than
9 through 12 only.
Do they start doing that now, or is that something where we can see how things are come that time?
I would say let's just table that till October.
I guess I'd agree with what Zoom said, and I'm just going off of what Aaron said, that doesn't usually start till first part of October. I think you'd table it till something a little closer to that.
Like you're talking more about September.
Okay, so if we take no action, that's not allowed until we take action. So we will bring it back up when it's appropriate. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, item 19 then.
Lori, would you wake up, Tina?
Discussion and action regarding,
Do you want me to come to the table or would you?
if you could come closer, there's a microphone right here. So it's discussion and action regarding limitations on band and choir in-person practices and performances. So we have our music staff here, both in person and on Zoom, I believe, and you brought up for us, I think.
So I want to thank you for hearing our spiel tonight. I want to introduce our middle school band director and sixth grade general music teacher. This is Mrs. Lynn Curry, and she is a 28-year experienced teacher who taught in, I'm going to check it here quick, Merrill, Wisconsin, the last 4 years, and 14 years at Hvac, sorry. And we have Mrs. Elena Markham. I think she's on Zoom. You may know her as Elena Leahy, also graduated from Darlington. And she is in her 4th year of teaching, and she taught 3 years at Ellsworth, so just down the road. So we shared with you some studies, and then we shared also our proposals for different ways we can teach our choir and band mainly, but I did add general music in that packet. So I'm not going to cover that too much, but I do want to just tell you a little bit about the Colorado study. We initially, there's a Vienna study, there's a West Point study, there's the New Jersey school plan that we also looked at, as well as the Colorado study. And the band study has come out, but the choir study was supposed to come out like July 28th or something like that, and has not yet. So most of the information that we have from them is about band. And a lot of the things that we saw, I don't know if anybody went on to any of the webinars that we showed, but one of the main thing was that instruments were just thought that they would spread a lot of aerosol droplets. And So they've had experiments where they've used, I think it's called the Schleichline machine, where they show that it's not as much as they thought. They do produce some, but not as much. If you've seen Mr. Fitzsimon's video about masks, they kind of did the same thing that he did, with not with a candle, but with a tissue hanging. And they played a trumpet very close to the tissue and it didn't move at all. But then when they started speaking, the tissue was moving back and forth. So if you can imagine that from a trumpet.
What they're saying is most of the aerosols are actually being produced within the instrument and not coming out of the instrument.
Right. But they do suggest that we have bell coverings for all the brass instruments, mainly is what they focused on. Is that correct, Elaine?
Correct. And they did something as simple as just nylon stockings that you can wear and put them on double coated on the end of the trumpets and on the clarinets, just to make them a little safer.
Which is one thing that we're looking at doing ourselves. They suggested students, of course, feet apart in a straight line formation. Trombones would have to be 9 feet away from each other. Masks should be worn with slits. So we'd have masks like this with slits so people could go through that. However, like UW Platteville Marching Band is starting up August 2nd. They're wearing the gaiters. And when they're playing, they take the gaiters down. When they're not playing, they put the gaiters back up. So they have facial covering when they're not playing. And that study, I just put down that over 125 organizations were part of wanting that study to happen, including the National High School Federation was on that also. And the study from Colorado especially was very much anticipated by all of the schools and musicians in the United States, but also in the world. Let's see, we're mainly here because as anybody who's participated in music knows that ensembles are really important to music. Most kids don't come out for music because they want to play an instrument by themselves or sing by themselves. So as much ensemble playing that we can have is what we're asking you to think about.
And when we think about, you know, what's been going on in the pandemic and the social and emotional parts that kids were missing out on. I mean, this is a big part of your schools. Contacting with them with their social and their emotional learning also.
Just like our sports that you're just talking about too. They also recommend, like, if we have a rehearsal, let's say with everybody, that of course outdoor is the best place for that, as you have been talking about, and with mitigation techniques in place with the masks. We'd have masks on, we'd be 6 to 9 feet for the trombone apart outside. The bell coverings would be used for band. For singers, I know singing is taboo right now, but again, I was referencing Mr. Fitzsimon's wonderful video he did, and he ended his video with a 2-layered mask with a filter in it, and he was like this far away from a candle and no air went to the candle that way. And I thought that was a great way of maybe suggesting that we could maybe sing outside if we had those types of masks and possibly face shields too. They also said the second place that would be good for maybe a larger ensemble is indoor with elevated outdoor air exchange rate from an HVAC. So I know you just talked about some purifying systems. So that would be beneficial for the band and choir programs also. I just wanted to talk about a few area schools and what they're doing. Blackhawk, my brother's the principal there, and they're going back full time, and they are having choir full time, the whole ensemble. Now I don't know the numbers of those kids, but they're having rehearsal in the band room with masks. The band is meeting trumpets all together one day, and then the next day it might be clarinets and flutes, and then the next day. So they're breaking down their band a little bit for rehearsal purposes. Now, I'm not sure what happens with the other kids. I know some schools, when they're not working with other kids, they're doing projects that the teacher has suggested. So I know with block scheduling, that might be kind of tricky to do, but they also recommend, and throwing a lot of information out at you, they recommend 30-minute rehearsals. Again, maybe not so much aerosol spreading then. If we go with a 30-minute rehearsal, 45-minute was the longest one that I saw. I don't know about you, Lynn.
Yeah, they say they recommend not any more than, they're saying 30 minutes, but not, for sure, not any more than 45.
Right. Richland Center, they're having band ensembles of 15 or fewer with the maskless slits, the social distancing. If they can be outside, then it would be full band, socially distanced with masks. Iowa Grant is having small ensembles, again, only trumpets or only saxophones. They're purchasing plexiglass dividers, but we're hearing that that might not be the best answer because the room's air doesn't circulate as well if we have these plexiglass between the performers. They're going to utilize their whole room, bell covers for the brass instruments. Flute players are having small shields, so I don't know if you have thought about those. Merrill, where you have taught, full band rehearsal split into 4 sections of between 25 to 30 students in each section. The students are socially distanced, all facing the same direction. The windows are open, and they've had marching band and camps with the exact same things of social distancing and masks. Iowa Grant, the choir is having no more than 4 students at a time together. The teacher is behind a plexiglass. Students have masks and plastic face shields to sing behind. Open doors and fans in the room is another idea they have. Again, choir and band, it's so nice and important to have as many people in the ensemble practicing together and hopefully performing sometime. See.
For the water droplets for the band, they're suggesting puppy pads. Also found that like the absorbent pads that are in the bottom of meat containers, like you can buy 2,000 of them for $53. And then they're just disposable at the end of the class. So if a trumpet player needs to empty their water key or whatever, it's just right there on the pad and then just throw them away so it never hits the floor.
Were you saying that Blackhawk is like more concerned with band than choir, that their choir is gonna meet normally just with mass, but their band are gonna divide up by instrument section?
And again, I don't know their numbers and why that is. He didn't really state that. I should ask him since he is my brother. But I think they're doing the masks and slits also, but I'm not sure if that's a number issue. So I can ask him though. I also reached out to Leah at the health department with some questions. And I asked her first about singing, since that's my area. And she said, if you are singing, the current recommendation is to have masks and be socially distanced to at least 6 feet apart. The more PPE used, the further students are spread apart. That will have less of a chance there is to spread COVID. I asked her about using face shields with the masks and or possibly a clear shower curtain. My sister-in-law is doing that for her classroom. She's having a clear shower curtain instead of a plexiglass for the singers. And again, she just stated that that would be another great addition to PPE. She felt a shield is nice to have also for singers because of the eye contact, possibly of any aerosol droplets. So that's what I would recommend, 2 or 3 layered mask with a face shield. And then if we need to do a clear shower curtain also. I asked her about band recommendations also. Again, masks, social distancing, plexiglass shields, instrument coverings, proper sanitation, etc., are all great options for decreasing the chance of spreading COVID. So mainly what I'm going to talk about is right now, and Lori has put together a plan that I would teach my choir students one-on-one. So only one student in the room. I measured my room today and could have up to 4 students. That would be 7 feet away from each other, all in a straight line. And I would be 16 feet in front of the room behind the piano. Again, if they can have masks, the face shields, and we would not sing the entire time. I know that can cause, singing in a mask probably can cause some issues with breathing. So we would be taking probably 15 minutes to sing, and then we would do some other rhythm things and then come back to singing. If we can sing outside, I still would probably have the kids in masks and face shields. Again, if it's outside, you know, with the pods, it would be hard to have the kids all together. I have 18 signed up right now, and not all the kids turned in their things. Mrs. Davis said for the guidance counselor, so I'm not sure if that number will go up then, but it would be an 18 number of kids outside if we do that. Also, the pods, I checked with the pods, and I would have, I think, a maximum of 5 students that are in choir coming from one room. I think that's my biggest room number though. So maybe that group I would divide into 3 and 2 on different days. But if I could have 5 at once, I just would need to move my risers and stage pieces out of the way, and I can have another 7 feet for another 5th student. For Lynn, I don't know if you want to talk about what you'd like to see.
Originally, the thought was to have one-on-one lessons again with the band. That would mean like no band rehearsals at all. And when I figured it out, it was, you know, a half hour, maybe 20 minutes worth of playing by the time you get them there and get their instruments out, ready to go. The problem comes in is that I would have them, I would see each student for a half an hour, but it would take me almost 2 full weeks to see them. So I would literally see my student for 20 minutes every 2 weeks. I mean, it's kind of like handing an instrument to them and saying, here, good luck. That, you know, that's very, very, very little guidance, especially when you're talking beginner students that really have no idea what they're doing. So the last I heard, Lori was saying they were re-looking at that and hopefully getting, you know, 4. I'm going to push it and say I'm hoping to get 6. I guess as many as I can get at a time so that I get to see them more often is going to help. And they could still be in the band room. I mean, it'd be at 6 to 8 feet apart the whole time.
Well, there's plenty of room there.
Right.
There, so space.
Yeah. So, you know, and then another concern is the pods. You know, that they're in pods all day long, that we don't want to be taking them from different pods and then combining them. So they would have to come from the same pods, but even with that, you know, if I can get them more often, it's going to help. You know, I kind of feel like if, you know, no matter how good of educators we are, or, you know, the potential that the kids have, or the great curriculum we have, if I don't get to see them, I can't help them. And it's going to cause a lot of frustration in the students. And so I guess that's why. I think the pods are there to try to minimize our risk, right, and exposure. But the reality is when they go to volleyball or cross-country practice or football practice, they're not going to be in their pods anymore, or on the weekend at a friend's house or whatever they choose to do. So, you know, I personally have no issue with a pod of kids coming to band or choir. If it's outside, I mean, I don't see why there can't be more than one pod, just my opinion. I think the masks and face shields are definitely a good idea. And I mean, your idea for the spit, I think you both, or all 3, have done a great job of researching it. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but again, that's people choosing that they want their kid in band or choir. You know, it's an extracurricular. So I think that as long as we have a plan to present to parents so they're aware, you might get more people like, oh, I like that plan.
And if we do go virtually, we're going to plan on the first week or so, teaching the kids different apps that we're going to be using for virtual, Flipgrid, Acapella app, Google Classroom, how to do a voice memo so we can have them record a recording of their playing. So they'll have that in place when they do, if we do have to go virtual. And that would be our performance then, probably putting something together via that, the Acapella app. You can have like 9 students trying to play together if they can keep a beat, right? We want to keep them a beat. And that could be something that we send out to parents then that they're performing. If I could have a full group or even small groups, at the beginning of our school year, I'm planning on maybe doing some Veterans Day songs right away, recording those, videotaping them so we can have those ready for our Veterans Day celebration, maybe even some holiday songs that the choir ensembles can do or band ensembles can do, so we're ready for those too, rather than having them recorded online.
I just think, you know, like with band, it's something you have to understand that it is not like riding a bike. You can't just put it down for a year and then come back and expect to be where you were when you started. It really, it's building, constantly building skill upon skill upon skill upon skill. And you also have to think parents are paying for their instruments. And I don't see many parents wanting to pay for instruments that aren't being used.
Well, would you guys be okay with kind of like we just did, where you give Aaron and Lori some guidance maybe, but maybe not have a vote on 2 layers of pantyhose on trumpets?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
And I don't know what guidance you want to give them, but just give them some guidance, but then maybe they have some flexibility to make adjustments as they see appropriate or something.
I guess my only concern with doing full sections is that is then breaking up our cohorts that we're trying to stay with all day long. But I don't have a problem with smaller groups coming out of those cohorts. That's.
But we're not gonna break up volleyball, cross country and football by cohorts, right? That's gonna be whoever chooses to participate.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's also after school though.
Correct.
Football is after school. They're not going back into the classroom. Yes, they're going to their whatever, same way with volleyball also. You know what I'm saying? Band, you're pulling right out, you may be pulling them out at 10 o'clock and,
Well, it's 5th hours.
or whatever hour it is. So middle of the day, they're getting put back in with the rest of it too. So there is a little bit of difference.
I think as much as we can, we should try to keep those cohorts intact. I mean, there are the other allied arts too that are operating the same way. We're gonna expect them to do that. Not that it has to be no exceptions to that. If you figure out that there's some small exception that makes sense, fine, but.
Right, the small ensembles, I think both Lynn and I and Elena probably would say the same thing, that we're very okay with that. I think it's the one-on-one finding the time to really give these kids high music education, that we want them to have and to be a well-rounded student. So a smaller ensemble can be done very easily if we take them from those groups. So thank you very much for hearing all that. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you guys comfortable with your guidance?
I am, yeah.
I'm with basically what you said, Aaron. I mean, I don't want to break up too much, but I mean, I understand some exceptions will exist.
Yeah, we got to trust administration and staff to work together and be reasonable with that. All right, everybody comfortable with that? Can we move on?
Yep.
Item 20, already, is executive session. This is for discussion of certified nursing assistant candidates. This is appropriate for executive session under Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent C. Motion to go into executive session would be in order.
So move.
Motion by Hermanson, second by Brunko to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. For anyone on the live stream, we are going to disconnect that now. There will be a new live stream after closed session for any action that happens then.